Clemson, Ohio State in the Sugar Bowl on January 1st. It's almost like we've done this before. Got Brian Knight on the line to talk up the Clemson side and a little bit Buckeyes, because at this point, Brian, I think it might as well be that Ohio State just joins the ACC, because you've seen them. It's going to be 4 times since 2013.
Absolutely. I can't believe it. I am enjoying the playoff matchup with you guys again. Of course
you are. Of course you're enjoying it.
I'm thrilled. No, I tell you this. This is crazy. So yesterday morning, I was sitting in church, and we were sitting near the front. Now, nobody could see us really, really well. But I turned right at about 5 after 12. I have YouTube TV on my phone. I turned my phone over. I turned on the selection, made sure the sound was off. And in between listening to the good news, I was also getting some more good news. So it was when I saw Ohio State and Clemson, I just started laughing. And then, of course, I was shocked that Notre Dame got in. But man, I'm excited. I know that you have 2 premier football teams that's really dominated in the college football playoff era. And they're back. So it's going to be a good time.
Brian, there is going to come a year. I don't know when it's going to be, but there's going to come a year when you're actually going to legitimately have to be on the edge of your seat, where Clemson may be 10-2 with an ACC championship, or a non-champion with a loss, and you'll actually have to be on, not just kind of thinking, oh, are we going to be 1 or 2? Are we going to be 2 or 3? You've had it pretty easy.
I have been very spoiled. I was thinking about that today when we were talking about doing the show tonight, and I got to thinking that if I divide up into sections how many years I've been pulling for Clemson since I can remember, and I was born in 82, so I can barely remember the Danny Ford days. And still, even with all this success that Clemson's had, I've had to deal with way more percentage-wise, years of disappointment, wasted talent, just up and down in the toilet bowl. So it is fun, but you are right. I'm spoiled. The Clemson community is spoiled, and so it's nice. I'm going to take it while I can, because 15 years ago, I was thinking about this as well. 15 years ago, Mark, if you and I were doing a show tonight, we wouldn't be talking about Clemson at all. We'd be talking about Texas and Southern Cal. And when you consider these 2 historic football teams, I mean, they're at the top of the top historically. And then you see where they're at now. As much as I love talking trash as much as anybody, it's just life. Things comes in cycles. Nebraska football, 40 years, and I think they had one 9-win season, and everything else was like 10+ wins, national championship appearances. Look at Nebraska football today. So I'm enjoying it while it's here.
Brian, you always say so many things. You take me in like 18 different directions that I want to go after you get done. So this is good stuff, because I'm going to make one other point about you as a Clemson fan being just in a comfortable position when these selections are made and when they're revealed every year, because you got Alabama and Clemson. Then you've got this argument about whether Ohio State's been in the category of those 2, but they're either in the category or they're in their own category just under them, and then there's everybody else. So it strikes me as fascinating. We've done this now for 7 years. Clemson clearly missed the 1 year in 2014 before they went on their run. Alabama missed last year. They were really good, but they lost 2 games, so they didn't have an argument. They clearly missed it, even though they were probably one of the 4 best teams. I certainly think that they were. For Ohio State, though, they've been in this odd place, except for 2019. They were undefeated, so they were clearly in. And this year, they were in that strange place where you pretty much knew, okay, well, the committee had them at 4. They just beat a top 15 team to win a conference and complete an undefeated season, or an undefeated half season. So they're going to make it. But there was that uncertainty that, maybe the committee will rethink this. But other than those 2 seasons from 2014 through 2018, that's 5 consecutive years, the Ohio State fan was like on the edge of their seat. Like Ohio State has been on that 4-5 line every year. 2014, they squeezed in. 2015, they were considered one of the 2 or 3 best, but they had the one loss to Michigan State that cost them the conference, so they just missed. They actually finished 3rd in the country that year. 2016, first non-conference champ, they get squeezed in. 2017, they win the Big Ten, but they got the one bad loss, so they get left out at 5. 2018, they get left out at 5. They eventually win the Rose Bowl, still finish number 3 in the country. So they've been on the 4-5 line like almost continuously. It's just kind of fascinating that they've been the one team that's always a bit controversial.
Well, I mean, of course, I have to bring this up because I'm just that guy. There was that one year that my team shellacked them 31-0 that opening round, and it was a wonderful time for me. I know that was not a wonderful time for other people on this on this show, but in all seriousness, outside of that, I mean, look, you won a national championship. And the other time last year, come down to the wire. I mean, at least you're not like Oklahoma, who every time they get put in, they get their brains kicked in. And I know there's a bunch of Sooners fans who's already just absolutely irritated that I said that. But I mean, the truth matters and statistics matters. And no matter how much you pull for your team, it doesn't erase what happened. And but yeah, Ohio State. But you got to think about this. Ohio State has been, for the most part, consistent in postseason play. The one downer you bring, that's the one embarrassing one. Other than that, if you're a Buckeye fan, you don't have just all wins, but you can deal with the rest. You swept through in 2014 to win a national championship, and then last year's was a great game, heartbreaker, but you showed up, you were good, you just blew it at the end, and it didn't work out, but it wasn't embarrassing. But that 2016, that is the one that Clemson fans can really ride. But that night, I had to work. I was at a different job, and I had to work that night, and we had a TV nearby. And I hate it. You know how it is when you have to work and you have to miss some stuff. But I would periodically pass by the television, and everybody who worked there was Clemson fans. And I just never forget looking up and going, "What is going on?" I mean, I'm happy, but what is going on, And so, but anyway, getting back to your point, we've had it easy. We've had it easy over the past 6 years. All of that goes back to Dabo Swinney. It goes back to the mindset that he's built at Clemson. He's retained the majority of his coaches, and when I say majority, like 90% of them. We just lost Jeff Scott last year, and honestly, if Elliott and Venables left tomorrow, I mean, first, who could blame them? If they stay tomorrow, who could blame them? Their seat is far from hot. They're praised, they're worshiped, they're admired. They can really have a pick of the litter of the jobs that will come open really anytime. As long as there is nothing bad about their personality that comes out and it could be damning to their career, these guys could just sit and wait and go, jobs didn't come open that would have piqued my interest. So I'm just going to stay at Clemson. And so Swinney, our success, I say our like I play, but I just really mean the Clemson community. Clemson's success has been contingent on Dabo Swinney and what he's done. And I always tell everybody, these are the good old days of Clemson. We need to soak this up because, once again, Texas, Southern Cal, Nebraska, Tennessee, Michigan, they would love to be where we're at.
And there was a time for the Ohio State fan. Now, it didn't last long. I put together a video, this might have been about a year ago, and tried to go through all the elite programs and the elite programs at one time, Miami, Florida State, but of course the elites now, and try to answer the question, when was the last time they were down? And I went through history, went to that point, and I defined being down as it being not just one season. If you're humming along at 11-1 and you got an 8-4, you're not down. You bounce back. You just had a cycle down for 1 year. But where at least for 3 years, you're not contending for a conference championship. You're going 6-6, 7-5, 8-4, something in that range. And you're just at least for 3 years. And I had to go back to the late 80s. And you know how when you're younger, 2 years, 3 years seems like an eternity. When you're 12 years old, let's say, that's your football life. It's like, when I was 9, that's been forever. So during my fandom at that time, I was older than that, but not much. I'm looking at Ohio State, and they kind of hit a swoon in 87 and really didn't dig out of it until about 92. There were like 5 or 6. They weren't awful, but they were a lot of 8-4s in there, and they really weren't relevant. And it just seemed like forever. But that's been the last time Ohio State's been down. You bring up Danny Ford. I got to think, since you were born in 82, he, of course, took you to the promised land in 81. And me being older than you, I remember that game. That you probably grew up with Clemson football. And you guys were good throughout the 80s and into the early 90s. There were a lot of 10-2, 9-3 kind of years. But that probably came up a lot where you were like, yeah, I wasn't around for that 81, but everybody brings it up. We won it 81 under Danny Ford. He's still here, kind of thing.
You can still go to Pendleton, South Carolina, where he has his farm. Last time I saw Danny Ford, my wife and I, we were doing our getting our pre-wedding pictures taken, and this was back in 2012, and we did it. Outside of Pendleton, because my cousin, he's a photographer, said, hey, I've got a great place for y'all to go shoot. And then afterwards, we went to this little Mexican joint in Pendleton. And lo and behold, there sits Danny Ford, his wife, I believe that was his wife, and another couple. He's sitting there drinking a beer. And I was like, sweetie, you don't know who that is over there, do you? And she's like, oh, he's a big old dude. But yeah, I mean, that's what Clemson fans had to deal with. And it was just so up and flipping down. You would have talent come in. I'll never forget where I was at when C.J. Spiller shocked the world and said he was coming to Clemson. I was in Noonan, Georgia. And for those of you who are country music fans, that's Alan Jackson's hometown. And I was actually playing a gig in that area that day. And it was early that morning. I walked by USA Today paper, and there sits C.J. Spiller signing with Clemson. And it was just, I think that's where the road started to change. But, of course, Sweeney had to take over. We know that Sweeney's second season, he went 6-7. I mean, it wasn't just like Sweeney came in and everything immediately changed. But what he's done is remarkable. His players believe in him. This is also something, not to get off on some crazy subject, but we've seen, especially in this offseason, teams who turned against their coaches. I think some of the problems you see at Florida State right now is because, basically they bucked the head coach and said, hey, you didn't react on a situation the way we felt you should. So unless you do XYZ, we're not going to play. We saw that in Oklahoma State. We saw that at a few different places. What's truly interesting was we had major media outlets and a few writers, which I just think they absolutely hate Sweeney, who went after him. And what did you see? You saw his team, no matter what they look like, no matter where they come from, step up and go, whoa, 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 whoa. Nuh-uh, not here, not here. That is what to me is remarkable, because there was a few times I was sitting there going, I don't know, because we saw so much bad that went on. But these guys really believe in Sweeney, and Sweeney has been so good to them. He cares for them. He cares that they graduate. He cares that they step out of trouble. He is an open, outspoken Christian. He's not going to force his beliefs down their throat, but he's also going to say, look, this Jesus guy over here he's actually, you ought to check him out. So it's when you go to Clemson these days, and I'm going to tell you this because I still go through Clemson all the time, see my family. I live about an hour away now. But you go into Clemson and you interact with people there, especially in the sports category. I was reacting with them when all the other coaches was there, and I'm not saying anything bad against those guys. I'm not saying that they wasn't legit or cared for their players. I'm just saying it's different. It's like stepping out and breathing fresh, cold mountain air, and there's not. I mean, you just know it's healthy. That's how I feel about that. And I tell you, this offseason, I come away from it going, he really did build a culture and not a cult. You know, it was I actually love this guy instead of I'm looking for ways to manipulate him to do what I want him to do. And I think that really, really speaks volumes. I think it's going to help us continue, as long as he wants to stay there, continue to be successful.
And not to take it too far down this road, but you hit on something regarding his faith. Some people will call it religion, Christianity, spirituality. If it was 1985, or certainly in the 50s and the 60s in this country, because I've heard a number of people criticize him even directly to me and say, that's an act. That act is not necessarily popular in all phases of society in the United States in 2020. You know, that's not gaining him points in a lot of places. That's him. He's not doing that because that's not him to gain points with a culture that's so divided as it is. That's going out on a limb. That's just being himself. And also being himself is ranking Ohio State number 11. For 11.
Oh my God. Well, I tell you this, one thing about the guy that you can always say is that he's going to tell you. I'm looking at my hat in my reflection monitor. It was sideways. I was like, oh God, I got to fix that. No, he knows how to stir the pot. He truly does. He really does. We didn't see the Roy bus this year, really. I did see him step back. We really didn't hear anything about them keeping us out. He's really played that for the past 3 years, really, really heavy. He really stepped away from that. But I think he took a page out of the old ball coach down from South Carolina. He ran back to Gainesville, Florida, because he didn't want to be a loser with those bunch of chickens down there. But Steve Spurrier knew how to stir the pot, and he did it. He did it all the time, and there was a part of you that's going like, is he serious, or is he joking, or is he a little bit of both? And I think Sweeney is a little bit of both. And he knew exactly what he was doing, saying that about Ohio State, and it was hilarious. It was hilarious.
Brian, I just think he's simply on board with the Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football, top 25. That actually makes sense because we rank the teams based on the resume. And, you know, he's just saying basically, I don't necessarily think Ohio State's the 11th best team in the country. I got to think that he knows that they're a top 4 team. Just, hey, they didn't play the games. So their resume says you get dealt, a blow here. We're going to penalize you for not playing the game. So you're number 11. I'm going down the line. Okay, you're the best undefeated team with 6 games. Boom, you're 11. And he's just sticking to his guns. And yeah, but he also knows he's poking the bear.
Oh yeah, I mean, as much of a good guy as he is, and I don't believe it's an act. You and I both know only God truly knows a person and their thoughts and their heart and who they truly are.
Absolutely.
With that said, anybody you talk to who knows Sweeney, even before Sweeney was Sweeney, he has always been a stand-up guy. But he is from Alabama, and he did play at Alabama. He played for Stallings, and those guys, they kind of like what you said, back in the 80s, it was a different time. 60s, it was a different time. There were certain things that, a profession of faith, like you were talking about. I mean, if he's trying to win some points, he should definitely stop talking about that, which of course I don't want him to, but I'm just saying, that if he's trying to appease people, but he's still that Alabama boy from Pelham, and he's still going to talk some trash here and there, and I think it's good, and it's going to be a good time.
If you're truly just trying to win points with the media and through them the fan base and College Football Nation, trying to get the best players, and you're not comfortable with who you are, then when it comes to that faith card, what you're going to do is you're going to just leave it out, just not even touch it. And then for those players that come into the program that feel the same way, then you're going to take them aside and you talk that lingo with them, but otherwise you leave it alone. But he's out there. He's out there with it, and it's to be commended.
Throw this out there. How many times do you hear of a Clemson football player who gets in trouble? I say this to people, and I have a friend of mine who is an atheist. I mean, he and I are two totally different people, but we're friends, and I love him to death. But we have totally different ideas politically. We have totally different ideas of. Almost, but it's just, we get along. We're fine. He knows where I stand. I know where he stands, but we're friends, But you also go to just production. You just go to production, and I'm in the corporate world. That's my day job. I'm in the corporate world. And at the end of the day, you come to the end of the month, no matter how hard you work, no matter the strategy, no matter the process and everything, you come back to this. What are the results? Well, I tried really hard. Say that. Imagine that phone call to your supervisor, your manager, your VP. Well, but I worked really hard. I put in overtime. What's your results? His results is they graduate a lot of people. They graduate, I don't know the exact percentage, but it's like 90%, 95%, something like that. These guys are rarely, if ever, in trouble. They're winning. You have to scrape hard to find something bad. That's why when the whole PED thing came out, you saw people almost dancing naked in the street. Like, we finally got it. We finally, yes. And then I think the reason why it comes back to that is I think that if you can lower the bar and get it set in your mind, in my mind, that for me to be successful in this life, I just have to be dirty. I've just got to do some bad things. But y'all got to understand, I got to provide for my family. And I've just got a job to do here. And so it recalibrates the expectations of people. Well, that guy cheated and this guy cheated. And I know he did this, he did that. And then you see a guy like Kim come along. And it's like, oh, crap. You mean you can actually do the right thing and have great results? And that ticks some people off because, at the end of the day, they just enjoy being dirty. They enjoy being cheaters. They enjoy being jerks. They enjoy all of these things. And then a Dabo Swinney comes along. And so, once again, he is a human being. It could come out tomorrow he's having an affair on his wife. That doesn't take away that he's a good person. It means he failed and did something stupid. But the point is, we're talking football here, guys. His program is clean. It's clean, and it produces great results on and off the field. To me, I think anybody, no matter what their belief system is, and no matter what team they pull for, take all the shots you want to, and trash talk. It's part of the game. We all love that. It's fun. But when it comes to seriousness, that's just an act. Are you saying that because you just want to continue to be dirty and cheat, and that's just how the world runs? And I hate to say it, that's not the case for a lot of people, but there are people that's the case. That's their case. So I'm really happy for what he's done for the Clemson community.
Yeah, he's been in the job now for 12 seasons?
Yeah.
So he's been in the job for 12 seasons, and at this point, the players are going to ultimately vouch for the relationship that was built. So regardless of whether you agree with him, people know in the long run whether you care about them and you were doing what you were doing in their best interest. And the players all support that and all confirm that. We got a lot of good people here in the chat. A lot of familiar names. Good to see everyone. 87 on the line. Phil B., Florida State fan. Mackenzie Milton going to shred Miami's defense next year. We're talking Ohio State Clemson. Phil B., we love that you are so excited and are gathering a little bit of hope, because these poor Florida State fans, boy, they've had a rough go now for 3 years. 4 years.
Rough.
Yeah.
Rough.
I didn't see it coming.
Yeah. I was at that thrashing last year in Death Valley, and I was just sitting there rubbing my eyes, because my very first college football game was like 1994, Florida State at Clemson. Danny Cannell, Warwick Dunn was playing on that field, and trust me, way different. Way different. And so, after seeing the Seminoles in the light that, kind of like we were talking about earlier, shells of history, it's hard to sit there and watch it. You keep rubbing your eyes going, this is not real. But I'll take it, because they used to thump us all the time. So I don't mind watching it,
Oh, absolutely. You got some catching up to do.
We do.
So I was looking at ACC championships. Clemson's number 1. But we'll also consider that Florida State joined in 1992. So since Florida State joined, they're number 1 with 15. Clemson is 6. So consider how Clemson's been dominant in the last 6 years, winning 6 consecutive. They've got 6 since 1992, since Florida State joined. So it's 15-6, Florida State. Yeah, if you would have told me as Florida State was holding up Jimbo Fisher the BCS championship trophy in January of 14, or even as recent as January of 17, they beat Michigan in the Orange Bowl, finished top 10 in the nation. Been like, what? They're going to do what? They're going to win 6 and then 6 and 5 and 2. And they're this awful? Really? Already? Wow. That was off the rails quick.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy. And once again, that goes back to what I was saying earlier. Clemson fans need to enjoy this moment while it's here, and just have some fun. I see a lot of, now, of course, in my alter ego, May there Bobby Durkin, seeing a lot of May there's to Bobby Durkin, which still a lot of people believes he's real, and I'm loving it. I'm loving it. I have people show up, go out of their way to tell me that, a bunch of stuff. Some's very colorful. Some, I'll have to say, was quite creative. But I think Clemson fans have, over the past probably 3 years, after the national championship, I would say definitely. I think some of us started taking ourselves a little too seriously. It's almost like we've joined the Ivy League, if it was academics. I'm over here at the Harvard Club or the Yale Club. Or, guys, look, we're a little country school in the corner of South Carolina, one of the most beautiful places I think you can go. You have the mountains, you have the lakes. It's a beautiful campus. The people around there who were the they're the natives. They're not moving in for 3 or 4 years, and I don't mean that bad. And moving out, I'm just saying they're born and raised there, and their family roots are there. They're good people. A lot of family around there. But at the end of the day, we're a small. I say small, but we're a state school in the corner of South Carolina who has just happened to be fortunate enough to have one of the best football teams and best football coaches in the past 25, 30 years. And there's no reason to become arrogant. There's no reason to become conceited. We need to enjoy this. We need to have a good time. And because, like you said, poof, in 4 years, we could be in the Gasparilla Bowl like South Carolina is at 2-8, which I could go on about that for a very while. Long time. The
more football, the better in my book. So I'm okay with 2-8 bowl teams. Fine.
Hey, we'll take it. We'll take it. I love it. And anytime I can pick on those chickens, I go out of my way. So I know I'm on your show, but I've got to ask you. So you lost the talent, especially on the defensive side of the ball last year. Once you get to this level of play, Ohio State, Clemson, Bama, and you're consistently in the mix, always. Like to take a little jab at Georgia fans here. Got some good Georgia following, but I still like to take jabs at them. They're always bragging about how well they recruit, and it's like, hey, man, if you're in the top 10 consistently, 5 out of 6 years, guess what? They all recruit well. That's how you stay in the top 10. But it's what you do with it. So, of course, you've got a ton of talent. I mean, we see the rankings. We've got a ton of talent. Bama's got a ton of talent. There's guys who sit in a third string that could start at major programs immediately. With that said, you have your field generals. We saw what happened to us with Notre Dame. Skowski's gone. Skowski's out. And I have some commentary on that a little later before we have to go, but you lose those field generals. How do you think that those how do you think your current talent, Ohio State, is going to respond to seeing the number one pick in the overall draft and probably one of the greatest football players playing college football?
Yeah, the 4 and 5 stars have been replaced by 4 and 5 stars, but we're talking about 4 and 5 stars that proved that they were elite college football players and are now playing on Sundays and starting as rookies. We're talking about Chase Young. We're talking about Jeffrey Okudah, 2 of the top 3 selections in the NFL draft. That's elite. So that's not just you're an NFL player. Like we always talk, okay, Clemson, Alabama, Ohio State just loaded with NFL roster. But there's a top end in that. So I had a discussion with a Michigan person not long ago. Both teams had 10 players drafted last year. There's a difference between having 4 first rounders, 2 of the top 3 players selected in the entire draft, and then having 10 players all bunched in the 5th and 6th rounds. There's a pretty wide gap there. So it doesn't all mean the same in terms of personnel losses. And for Ohio State, that's elite pass rusher, best pass rusher in the nation, arguably the best cover corner in the nation, gone. Again, replaced by guys that were supposed to be coming out of high school just as talented, but they're not as good. Not at this level. Not yet. And J.K. Dobbins, now we saw Trey Sermon go off on Northwestern for 331. He's not doing it week to week like J.K. Dobbins, but they're going to rely on him, that's for sure. We saw J.K. before he sprained his ankle and before Clemson made some adjustments. He was like in the 165 or 170 range through 2.5 quarters. So they don't have replacements for those 3 guys right now.
Well, how do you think, especially on you love to bring up Michigan and pick at them. I love to pick at Michigan. The team, you'd almost think they were running for a political office and the media was pressing them, Anyway, I had to say that. But, Michigan season before last had, what was it, Jabril Peppers and what was that? Was it Devin Bush, the linebacker?
Yep.
Wasn't that his name?
Yep.
And a few other guys. And these guys are like legitimate.
Yeah. Rashawn Gary, Khalil Hudson. Yeah.
Yes. So they leave. And then I have Michigan fans and the media telling me that last year that ended up being a disaster. Oh, this is the year. And I went, look, whoa. We need to stop real quick. Like you said, you have this great talent. Notice, pause here. First Notre Dame matchup. We're missing Skowski. But on our line, everybody knows about all the crazy talent we have on our defensive line. Tyler Davis did not play. We've got Miles Murphy. We got Justin Foster. We got KJ Henry. We got Brian Brisset. We've got fill in the blank. There's another 2 or 3 of them. There's so many to keep up with. But Tyler Davis did not play. This is a guy who is a little smaller, but he's a lot like Dexter Lawrence. He didn't play. He played Saturday night. And you have to honor that. So I went back to the Michigan fans going, when you get into these big games, it's at that time the field general turns and looks at the fellow 5-star, but he's a sophomore, and goes, hey, get that scared look out of your face and be in your position. And that is the difference. So that is, to me, I think that's where we have an edge, our offense versus your defense, because to counter, our defense has really lacked in the secondary. We have Nolan Turner that got ejected on that. He's not going to play the first half because he took a shot with his helmet. They say that was a defenseless player, but for me, when you step onto a football field, you're no longer a defenseless player. You know exactly what you're doing, where you're at. I have these pads on me. Why is that, guys? You'll find out. And so that's how I look at it. But anyway, if I'm Ohio State, I'm going after us, and I'm going after us early and go, hey, we didn't come here to try to beat you in the trenches. We just came here to beat you. And we're going to go after where we think you're weak. And for Clemson fans, who's going to be honest with themselves, it's got to be the secondary. You got to test the safeties early, and you have to let them know if tonight's a bad night for you, it's a good night for us.
SEC Dog chiming in. Mark Rogers, happy Ohio State squeezed in, laughed my ass off, and he wants an 8-game playoff. People get this wrong about me from time to time, except for the people that seem to watch on a consistent basis. I run a college football channel. Like, I got hit with a couple of tweets the other day about this guy says he's an Ohio State fan. He's got a Michigan helmet on his shelf. And then they were just jabbing at me. And I'm like, I run a college football channel. I cover all the teams. I try to be as objective as possible with the disclaimer that, you know what? Truth be known, it's impossible for anyone that has blood running through their veins to be completely objective. So I'm not promising that, but I do my best. I said Ohio State shouldn't be in the playoff in 2016. So I do my best to be objective. But yeah, I'm an Ohio State fan. But, I do Michigan videos and I try to be objective. That's just my take on the game and take on the sport. That's how I do it. So yeah, if Ohio State made every playoff with 4 teams, I would still say there should be an 18 playoff. Before you leave, Brian, and we got to let everyone know that you go to Bobby Durkins. So if people just put Bobby Durkins with an I, in the search bar on YouTube, they're going to find you, right?
They'll find me, Dirkens, Bobby Durkins. You go in there and you will find I tell you this, one day I Googled Bobby Durkins. There it is. Just for fun. And I tell you, the worst comments made about me was by Clemson fans. And that's how I know I've done a good job. I absolutely love it. It's a lot of fun. No, I will tell you this, man. I'll tell you the keys to this game for me as a Clemson fan, and this is just being realistic. Talking about those Clemson fans who love me so much, they love to hate me so much. I have caught flack for the past 2 seasons for telling the truth. Go figure that telling the truth would tick people off. The truth is that last year, coming into that season, we came off of that milestone win against Alabama, which shocked the world. We had guys on major networks, jumping off of bridges because they realized they were not being, as you said, objective. They were just, swishing around the same toilet water as everybody else. But I try not to do that, even though I'm donning this. But I said to the Clemson community, and I said on my channel, even though it was in character, and then I came on good shows like yours and as myself and said this. We are not hungry. Clemson has lost its edge. They are not hungry. They have the talent to dominate their schedule. They're not hungry. And I was told, how dare you? Coach Sweeney is doing this and he's doing that, and you don't understand, and they're not going to show their playbook, and every great excuse in the book. And then that one night, now I know that it was a once-in-a-lifetime team, and we see where that once-in-a-lifetime team is. They've crashed and burned, and they had a horrible season this year because they lost, guess what, all their talent. But that night, Clemson was not only just outplayed, they were outhearted. Moving into this season, I saw some more of that. That Notre Dame game reminds me so much of that Pittsburgh game we had with Deshaun Watson. Pittsburgh came to Death Valley and scored 45 points on us. My God, unless they're playing William and Mary, they don't score 45 points anytime. And they did it to us from that point on, Clemson became a robot, just blasting through everybody. And what I saw Saturday night, I called my dad, because I call my dad during football games. I called him and I said, this is the first time they've looked hungry since that championship season. And if Clemson is truly that hungry, I think we win the national championship again. As long as they're healthy, as long as they keep that edge, I think we win it again. But they have to keep that edge, because you get, and you know this, you get into this stage of football, everybody wants it. Everybody's talented, but it's who wants it more, who plays with fundamentals, who is staying healthy, who is on their game, because this is big boy football.
So I got two questions. If you have time to answer them,
Yeah,
if
sure.
not, then we have the excuse of having you back.
I'll still come back, but I'll answer the questions.
Notre Dame, Texas A&M, or somebody else, did the committee get it right? How close do you think the call should have been? What would you have done?
We need an 8-game playoff. The only reason we don't have an 8-game playoff is because some people with PhD at the end of their names and CPA and probably a few other letters like SOB and so on tied up legal contracts, and now they're going to have to be honored and until we can get an 18 playoff. We don't need more than 8. We don't need less than 8. We have 5 Power 5 conferences and 3 at large. Okay, that was not your question, but I want to preface that. Second of all, I think that the 3 best college football teams, even though I know you're an Ohio State fan, I mean, you play, 6 games? If I'm everybody else, I'm sitting there going, you got to be kidding me. You got to be kidding me. If I'm an Ohio State fan, I'm happy. But you have 3 really good football teams. At this point, it's a toss-up. If I'm A&M, A&M's like, hey, I know we got blown out by 4 touchdowns, but that was 6 weeks ago. These guys you put in, they got blown out by almost 4 touchdowns 17 hours ago.
And it could have been worse.
And it could have been worse, and you're going to put them in. So you know, if they're to put in A&M, and it might have made everybody feel better, but I think we're going to get the same result. Alabama is going to buzzsaw those guys, and it's not going to be pretty. It's going to be a remake of 2012 when what's that old guy who announces?
Mateo?
No, I'm talking about the old guy who was announcing the game, and he talked about how good looking
Brent
AJ
Musburger.
Yeah, and everybody got mad because he said that if you play quarterback at Alabama, that's what you get. Hey, just time out. You know me, I go on a rant for a second. I swear I won't get your channel banned. 15 seconds of a rant. Have you saw the girlfriends for a lot of these players? If these guys didn't play for a major college football team, they wouldn't be dating them. Anyway, time back in. But it's going to be that game all over again. But if you look at Cincinnati, you look at, and I know this is a long shot. Little Coastal Carolina, they're 4 hours from us. Man, aside from Clemson, I've sat and watched so many of their games. I've been pulling for them, love them. I love the story of their coach. If anybody knows anything about Coastal Carolina, they know first they're not in Myrtle Beach. They're in Conway, South Carolina, which is like 35 minutes from Myrtle Beach. But they know that, they've had a lot of struggles. And what a great story. But the committee thumbs their nose up to it. Somehow last week until Iowa State lost, Iowa State was sitting at 6. Okay, Matt Campbell's a good football coach. But before the Big 12 game kicked off, I looked at my son, Bobby Durkins Jr., and he was like, hey, who do you think's going to win? Without even thinking, I said, Oklahoma's going to beat them. Oklahoma's going to beat them. I didn't do research. I didn't have to go to a think tank. I didn't get on any forums. And guess what? Oklahoma beat them. There's something wrong with this thing, and we've got to rectify it. But to answer your question, if you're a Notre Dame fan, you're happy. If you're an A&M fan, you think you got left out, Bama was going to bust through you anyway. So just, you just live in the world of, it didn't work out. Darn.
So the other question would be, we've had this playoff for 7 years now, 4 spots per year. That's 28 spots. 16 have gone to Clemson, Alabama, Ohio State. Let people out there, let that sink in. 3 schools have taken up 16 of 20. They can only take up so many spots. They've taken up 16 of 28. Those 3. And a lot of people joke, and it's really not much of a joke, that it's almost become those 3, and then we rotate the 4th spot. It goes to Oklahoma, Notre Dame, Georgia. They're about the other 3 that figure into the mix. Is that bad for college football?
Well, we can't help who wins. I mean, if it's not Clemson today, another team. I get what you're saying there too, and I know that that's not directed towards me. It's just the question, the answer. You can't control who wins. I mean, if Ohio State is going to continue doing what they're doing, if Dabo Swinney stayed there another 10 years and he continues to adapt to the game, he continues to have good culture, he continues to surround himself by great coaches, they're going to continue to win. And so is Bama. Whenever Saban says it's done, okay, we can start talking that maybe it's not going to happen. But those 3 teams have decided their destiny. And it's time that teams like, if Georgia and Oklahoma, okay, let's stop there. Oklahoma has been the embarrassment of a lifetime when it comes to this college football playoff. If there is one team who has went in and embarrassed not only themselves, but their conference, it's Oklahoma. And I've even said, I mean, this year when they lost that second game, I started clapping like I was high on some type of weird drug. I was like, yes, we don't have to worry about hearing them chirp that we need to be in and that this is this year and what does last year's playoff have to do with it? No, it's last year's playoff and the other playoff. And then you had that one good game against Georgia in the Rose Bowl that you lost. We're tired of seeing you get shellacked. And if the coin is going to be flicked up between you and somebody else, for the love of God, would the committee take their pills that day and put in somebody other than you? But to answer your question, if Ohio State's going to keep winning, Clemson's going to keep winning, and Alabama's going to keep winning, if everybody else don't like it, how about you change what you've been doing and beat them? I mean, that's how you solve it. Beat them. Knock Ohio State out. If the Big Ten is sick of Ohio State running things, don't expect Ohio State to step back and go, you know what, guys, I think we just need to be a conference team player. And you know what, PJ Fleck, I like how he stands on the sideline and looks half mad the whole time. Let's put him in. That's not going to happen. And Alabama is going to keep crushing people as long as they want to. I mean, really, the SEC is Alabama and everybody else. We know that. I know Florida came in and gave them a good game and it ran down to the wire. But consistently, Alabama and everybody else. So if anybody doesn't like it, beat them.
Because if we're having this conversation any offseason over the last 5 years, and certainly the last offseason, and we polled the entire chat, we got 226 on the line, 80% of the people predicting the playoff, if we gave them a poll, are going to say Alabama, Clemson, Ohio State, and then there's going to be another team. Like it's become that predictable.
Well, I mean, it goes back to these teams have to. I mean, if you really want to, you have to get granular with your fix, with your resolution. Okay, let's look at the SEC. While the rest of the 13 teams are beating their chest, talking about history, Alabama is talking about their future, and they're winning big. And it's crazy. If you find a good Clemson fan who's realistic, they'll tell you, just like myself, we have a ton of respect for Alabama. We love trash talking Ohio State, but at the end of the day, even though we haven't lost to them yet, and knock on press wood, we don't this next week, we have respect for them that they have the program that they have. I can't say I respect Oklahoma. Oklahoma, I know they have history. They do have good athletes. I think Lincoln Riley is a good coach. But at the level that I respect Ohio State, no. Why? They hadn't earned it. I mean, if you show up to the party empty-handed all the time, That's not my fault. It's your fault. And then on the granular part, and I went on a nice little jab at Oklahoma just for fun. This is where it comes back to athletic departments making stupid hires. If you're angry that Ohio State is winning all the time, you have to make better hires. You have to make better hires in the SEC. The ACC over the past 2 years has made better hires. That's why our conference is beginning to look better. Go figure. Go figure that the guy who chooses who your coaching staff, who they are, what it consists of, the game plan, the mindset of the program. Who knew that was a big hire? Who knew that could be the outcome? That's why Urban Meyer, no matter where he goes, you could send him to the Red Hat Ladies of Idaho. You could send him to the Blind Boys of New Mexico. He's going to win. Why? Love him or hate him. He's a good coach. Love or hate Dabo Swinney and him bouncing around talking about the Roy bus. He's going to win. Mac Brown, we see him come back to North Carolina. He's winning. It matters who your head coach is. So if you're sick and tired of seeing these teams come in and just absolutely annihilate people, do something. And it's not going to be hiring somebody who has circled the toilet of college football and dropping them in. Now, the rebuttal to that, Mark, is, well, Dabo Swinney wasn't a big hire. I'm going to tell you right now, I was totally pissed off when they hired Dabo Swinney. I was pissed, and especially that second full season when he was 6-7. I was like, "What seventh ring of hell are we in now?" Nobody knew that. Hey, that's why I say Clemson fans need to chill out, stop taking themselves so serious, because we got lucky. We did. We really, really did. But history shows you that if you hire someone who has. They have a certain coachability about them. They have certain aspects of control and being innovative, yet they can pull the team together. You're going to do well. That's why I looked at the South Carolina Gamecocks and went, I know Shane Beamer, he's a Beamer, and I know he's been at Oklahoma. And one of y'all's big things South Carolina was saying was, he was at South Carolina during the heydays. Yeah, when Steve Spurrier was running things. Shane Beamer, and no offense to him, he makes way more money than me. He has the job that he has. I'm not just sitting here chomping on Shane Beamer. But if you'd have drove just another 2.5 hours on down the road, you could offer a guy who has a team who just a few years ago was one of the worst. He's got them in the top 12. You just beat BYU. They're undefeated. And he's actually a head football coach. You didn't go get him. It goes back to your athletic department, and that's the granular part of it. You have to make good hires. ACC football is changing. Why? Good hires. So if the rest of college football doesn't like that those three teams are running it, make better hires. Otherwise, just show up to the game, take your best pain pills, and it'll make the bruises and the hits not feel so bad, because they're going to bruise you, they're going to hit you, and they're going to beat you.
Dabo's addressed the situation at Clemson when they got serious about football and has said the other portion of that, Brian, is that the entire university structure, all the power players in the mix have to be on the same page. They all have to say, we're putting our resources toward football. We're going to be a football school. We're committed to winning from the top on down. The president, the chancellor on down have to be on the same page that this is what we're committed to doing. And that doesn't happen everywhere. What you brought up about Urban Meyer going coaching wherever, I always thought that would be a fascinating case study. End of a football season, you take Saban, you take Dabo, you take Urban Meyer when he was on the sidelines, and you go, Saban, you're going to Kansas. Dabo, you're going to Rutgers. Urban Meyer, we're going to send you out to Oregon State, and we'll see what you do next year. That would just be fascinating to see the change.
If you gave them 4 years.
Yeah, but even 1 year.
Oh, yeah, even 1 year, yeah. But I'll guarantee you in 4 years, those three men are wrecking so much of the college football world. And it comes back to, University of Tennessee is in a mess. University of Tennessee is in a mess because of how they've handled everything. You could tell that nobody was on the same page when they were making the Jeremy Pruitt hire. I mean, my God, that one guy, that Curry fella, gets fired because he goes against what so-and-so says. Well, hold on. There's bigger problems than football here. So you're 100% right. We see the reason that Florida State's in the crapshoot that they're in is because their school wasn't behind the football program, and Jimbo Fisher is going, hey, I know y'all think I just do everything here, but I do have to have some help. And I'm not a Jimbo fan. I don't trust Jimbo much farther than I can pick up my neighborhood and move it an inch. But he's a good football coach. And Jimbo just finally got sick and tired of it. He, when that fan was yelling at him and he got into it with the fan, I know everybody says, well, he shouldn't have done that. And I know what is ethical and blah, blah, blah. But I could only imagine how that cat felt walking through there, having some guy who's half drunk on Natty Light screaming at the very guy who brought you success. Because when Bowden left, things were not that great. And you have this whole school administration that is not working with you. And then, cousin Eddie that's drunk in his thong sandals is giving you lip. Yeah, I'm going to chew him out. And then after that, I'm going to leave the school. And that's what happened. So you're right. I mean, there's a lot of granular parts. It's a math equation. You change one variable, everything changes. And so it's very, very important. And I'll tell you this, and this is on a whole nother subject, and I've talked much longer than what I planned. I appreciate you having me on. My wife is probably downstairs going, where's he at? But it just bothers me. And I don't have a problem with people being rich. I don't have a problem with capitalism. I don't have a problem with people making money. I mean, you go out there, bust your butt, kudos to you. With that said, I do have a very big problem with these schools throwing around millions and millions of dollars to known losers. It doesn't make sense. It's not a good business decision. It'd be different say today I applied for a job and they were going to pay me $200,000 a year, and they say, well, what did you do on your last job? I lost. Did you hit your goal? There was that one time. But I want you to pay me $200,000 a year to be the VP of this company. It's a small company, and I get like a $50,000 bonus if I hit my goal. And they go, I got you one better than that. We're going to pay you $400,000 and give you a $200,000 bonus, and you've lost everywhere you've been. That's what these schools are doing. And it has created this mess that we have right now, this inflated pay of coaches. You want to pay $10 million a year to Dabo Swinney? He's earned it. Success. Meyer, you want to pay him $10 million? I think Ryan Day's a good coach, but for me, verdict's kind of still out with him because he took over the promised land. He really did. So I'm not saying he's a bad coach. I'm just saying, wouldn't you like to go coach Ohio State with all that talent? I would, and I hate him. Alabama, $10 million a year. Yep, that makes sense. Lincoln Riley, $5 or $6 million a year. Everybody put this in your pipe and smoke it. What? Brian Kelly's making only what? $1.6, $1.7 million a year as the head coach of Notre Dame, and he's got them in the playoffs. So all this imbalance of throwing money around, it has created a really poor economical system for coaching, and it sucks. And that's why we have these issues that we have, and these ADs and these athletic departments, they don't know what they're doing. They don't know what they're doing, and it don't reply to me, oh, it's really hard, you don't understand, when a lot of these are the very same people who is so stuck in the annals of academia that they look down the slope of their nose at everybody who's a common person and goes, don't you see that PhD right here? I'm a very smart person. Well, what you do is very stupid. But this says I'm a very smart person. Once again, we go back to what we were talking about earlier. Results. It's like having stupid children tossing out millions of dollars to God knows who just because, well, we want to. And it's a mess. It has made coaching a mess. And so it's only going to get worse. It's not going to get better. These payouts to these coaches is ridiculous. It is absolutely ridiculous. Will Muschamp is being paid out $21 million between Florida and South Carolina for losing. Now, first of all, Will is the man. He really, really is. He is the flippin'. He's the man. I'm not saying he's a bad football coach. And by the way, I've went on this rant before too, Mark. When a coach gets fired, it's not like if you and I get fired. If you and I get fired, man, we're praying. We're on Indeed.com. We might be looking to, get a certificate or something like that. These guys, they get fired. And yes, some bad things are said about them. I mean, I take that in consideration. He's going to make $20 million for losing. South Carolina. I'm going to tell this. I've told this story, but I always said it was somebody else. It was actually me. So if you've got just a few moments.
Oh, yeah.
I think you'll appreciate. This happened. So right around the time that Muschamp was hired at South Carolina, I was working fine dining. I used to be a fine dining server in downtown Greenville. And I was working a very, very nice place. And so I had, like, my last table when I was in fine dining business was Chipper Jones. That was my last table when I left and got my corporate job. And so I've waited on governors. I've waited on very, very, just cool people, But these guys came in. So I was used to like lawyers and stuff coming into this place. It's really swanky. And I realized this third guy who was with them had a voice that sounded so familiar. And so I'm minding my business, doing my job. And I started hearing him talk about South Carolina football. And I went, there ain't no way. He's the color commentator for South Carolina Gamecock football radio. I can't remember his name. I'd have to Google it. But it was him. And when he paid, I matched his name to it. Oh my God, this was him. But they had just hired Will Muschamp. And my father-in-law is a huge South Carolina Gamecock fan. He and I are great friends. We take shots at each other and have fun with it. But it's just, all fun. But when they hired Muschamp, I called my father-in-law and I said, did you hear, man? Muschamp's your coach. He went, because as you can tell, I have a lot of fun. I pick at people pick at me. He goes, no, he's not. I went, Tim, I'm not kidding. Will Muschamp is your new head coach. He went, are you serious? But anyway, I heard these guys talking, and they were lawyers, and they graduated from the law school. Yeah, they were older, but they were sitting with him, and he said this. And Mark, this lets me know that people do not look at like the full spectrum of, no matter where they're at, they can get lost in what they want to see versus what's really there. And he told them, he said that Coach Muschamp said that if he would have had this coaching staff he's assembled here at South Carolina, he would have never left Florida. And I remember pouring a bottle of wine at that moment. And in my head, I'm going, he's not even good and on the sauce right now. He really believes that. That's one thing about being drunk, Mark. At least you can sober up if you say something stupid. No, but there's no hope for you, my friend, when you're completely stone cold. Sharp as a tack, supposedly. And you still believe that. And I remember coming back telling a few people, I said, they really believe that they hired a guy who could not win at Florida, and he's going to do great at South Carolina. So, if Muschamp can convince them, back that Brinks truck up to the house, and me and Mama, we're going to go out there and get some money, and maybe even little Johnny over here fill his cargo pants full. If they're going to do it, I would go down there and coach that horrible football team. I mean, I'd be screaming, "Go Cox!" Well, fingers crossed, because I really don't mean it. But I mean, chickens everywhere. I'd have a whole coop, and they'd give me that money because, once again, it goes to prove they don't know what they're doing. They don't know, and I'm not talking about South Carolina, which they definitely don't know what they're doing. But a lot of these schools, they don't know what they're doing, and they're just shoveling more money than we can imagine, and it's creating this awful nastiness. So I guess you get what you pay for.
You do with that. Fortunately, we didn't have to pay for the hour with Brian here, but it was exceptional. It was worth being compensated for. But Brian Knight, Bobby Durkins, look him up on YouTube.
That's it. Thanks for having me on here, buddy. It's always a pleasure to come on your channel, and everybody hit that like button. If you ain't subscribed and you're subscribed to me, you got to subscribe to him now, because he's not only a friend of Bobby Durkins, he's a friend of me. And Mark, I'm gonna tell you, man, I think there's my guy is a character. My guy that I do, my channel it's a character. I love to push people's buttons. I love to get people worked up. It's fun because in real life, I'm nothing like that. I'm really chill. I like to cut jokes and be stupid. But there are a lot of guys who are doing the sports thing, and I just think that they go out of their way just to say whatever, whenever they can. But you truly bring a value to college football, but you're also one of the nicest, most knowledgeable people around. And it's just an honor to be on here, and I hope everybody tells everybody about Mark Rogers.
Appreciate that, Brian. We sit at 4-0, Clemson, Ohio State, and we'll see if that counter gets to 5. That's you waving goodbye, of course.
Oh, of course. There was no symbolism there whatsoever.
Brian, you have a great night.
Man, thanks for having me on.
It's always appreciated, man. Great time. We'll see you.
Take care.
Brian Knight, a.k.a. once again, Bobby Durkins. Just a good time. Great to have him on, as always. Always delivers. Always some good stories. Good analogies. I can't spin an analogy like Brian can there. I want to catch up with these super chats as well. Thank you, Chase Henderson. Appreciate that. We also had a couple coming in from Bleach Orange, and we'll get those posted to the screen as well. Chase Henderson and also SEC Dog. So I'll get those questions and those comments posted on the screen right now, and we will start taking calls as well. Chase is saying, I believe Ohio State was a much better team on both sides of the ball last year. Clemson is a better overall team this year than last year. Not good for Ohio State. Chase, you cut to the chase right there, and you're on it. Ohio State can win this game. They're capable of winning this game, but when you go through the matchups and you, again, cut to the chase of that analysis right there, it doesn't look good for Ohio State. It looks like a Clemson win. It looks like a competitive game, but it looks like a Clemson win. I thought Ohio State was a better team last year. They did not prove that on the scoreboard against Clemson, but the best team doesn't always win. And we also had some factors in the officiating game, and those were much debated and ballyhooed here on our platform and others. But that was the thought about Ohio State last year compared to this year. And as I mentioned, Okuda gone, Young gone, J.K. Dobbins gone off that team. They have yet to be replaced at 3 positions, especially the 2 on defense that are paramount to winning championships. Shutdown corners, pass rushers. Ohio State has a wave of pass rushers that come at you at 4 and 5 star level, but they're not game changers, All-Americans playing in an elite level. They're good players. So again, Chase, thank you so much for the Super Chat contribution. Want to remind everyone that your contributions individually and also sponsors, if we can get those sponsors in here, will keep us going. Cheryl is moderating, and we thank Cheryl for doing such a great job and reminding everyone to hit the like button. Let me back up on some of these Super Chats. Bleach Orange. The playoff has achieved the goal of not having an undefeated number 3 team out of the playoff. 2003 Auburn. That 2003, 2004. Regardless, believe it was 04. Doesn't matter. It's better than BCS, but can improve still. I'm right there with you, Bleach Orange. My response when it was announced in 2013 that there would be a college football playoff of 4 teams, or what it is in actuality is a college football invitational. You have to be invited. It's not a true playoff. But anyway, my initial reaction was, okay, on the positive side, it affords 2 worthy teams, 2 teams that have an argument to be in the former BCS championship game, the opportunity to prove against 2 other best teams in the country that they are the best. So it affords 2 other spots, 2 other teams. So it's a better system merely because of that. Didn't take a genius just to add 2 teams. And it automatically became better than the BCS. On the downside, 5 conferences, 4 spots, 5 conferences, math. Let's do some math here. 5 conferences, 5. Doesn't work. Okay. So I'm on there with you, Bleach. SEC Dog, Mark Rogers. How about making the Final 4 play each other the next year in the regular season before we go to 8 teams? I don't see the connection there, but it would be a great series. It would be a great matchup of games. That would be phenomenal. So this year, Ohio State would have played Clemson in the regular season. And, of course, LSU would have played Oklahoma. They would have been much different football games, especially the LSU-Oklahoma game, we would assume. But that would be fascinating. So in 20, and we'll take some calls here coming in. So it's time to get the phone lines cranked up and hear from all of you. But SEC Dog, I'm not understanding the second part of that, but I will address the question in full, or the comment in full, in just a second. But I love the first idea. That would be fascinating. Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Who's on the line?
The man that gives college football its voice, Mark Rogers. Hi, and how are you, sir?
Hey, Dave, I'm doing great. I appreciate you calling. What's going on?
Well, I just think it's high time that we've got to end the curse of Charlie Bauman. You know, I wanted to get in a Charlie Bauman reference.
That's
there,
awesome.
Mark.
Old number 55, and we'll let people scurry on over to Google and figure out what you're talking about.
Yeah, well, his helmet happened to hit Woody Hayes' fist. So
yeah, I don't know why he did that, but yeah.
Did you watch that game, Mark?
Oh, I was watching that game. I'm an old guy.
Wow.
Yep.
Yeah. Geez, Mark, I didn't. You just looked young. So I mean, I thought that was before your time.
That was the second ever Ohio State bowl game I ever watched.
Okay.
And I'm the type that when I dive into something, I dive into it full throttle. So, for example, I remember a Thanksgiving in 1977. I knew nothing about the NFL, knew nothing about football. My family was not a sports family. And we were having Thanksgiving dinner at a friend's house, and the other dad of the other family, some of the sons, big football fans, were watching O.J. Simpson and the Buffalo Bills on Thanksgiving Day against the Detroit Lions. And he points out to me, this guy, he just points at the TV screen and says, that's the best football player in the NFL. And like, I knew nothing about the football. I didn't know what a first down was. I didn't know what a blitz was. I knew nothing what was going on. I just thought it was exciting. Right. But within weeks, like, I know NFL rosters, I know the rules. Like, I went crazy. And so that's where that kind of began. But I remember Ohio State and Woody Hayes has lost to Bear Bryant in the 77 Sugar Bowl /78 January 1st. That was the first one I remember. And of course, the Michigan game prior to that was a 14-6 game. That was the beginning of my Buckeye fandom. Those games.
The last couple of years of the Hayes era were kind of trying times. You could see he was towards the end, and I guess later on in life he did admit he probably coached a couple of years too long, as evidence would happen in that Gator Bowl. He even admitted to that, I think, later on in life, that he probably coached about 2 or 3 years too long. Because, up until 75, with his greatest player, he had his best teams and could have won another national championship. And I had heard if he would have done that, he would have retired a few years earlier, which would have saved Buckeye fans all that problems, unfortunately.
Yep.
So, well, I listened to you on Pigskin Pete today, and I just a couple of points. First of all, I disagree with Pete on a lot of things. By the way, did you ask Pete that question that we talked about over the weekend? Does he have any doubt in his mind that if the ACC would have started their football season in late October, and if Clemson was 6-0 with an ACC championship, that a 6-0 ACC champion Clemson, that Don Sweeney wouldn't be out there fighting for his team to make the playoffs? Does he doubt that?
I did not think to bring that up. I didn't ask him that.
Okay. I'll have to ask him that question, but I'd just be curious to hear his opinion if the shoe was on the other foot question, because it's a very fair question, as we talked about. The other point that he brought up that I think is a good one, just bottom line in reviewing this game real quick, he's absolutely right. For the Buckeyes to win, they're probably going to have to score right around 35, maybe even north of 35 to win, I believe. Last year, I was a little bit more comfortable with them winning the game, maybe into the 20s, and the game was in the 20s, obviously 29-23. But I'm more comfortable this year. I'm going to say they're going to have to win by scoring at least 35, north of 35. Is that kind of your early read as well?
Yeah, that Clemson scoring a ton of points, and of course the defense is going to have to step up big, but it's just inconceivable to think that they're going to be able to make that many stops to hold them into the 20s. Yeah, this is a mid-30s game if Ohio State wins 38-35. Yeah, I would agree.
Yeah, maybe 35-34 if they're lucky, but somewhere in that neighborhood's probably about right. I think that the thing about it being is, and just bottom line, I'm going to make this point, and, obviously I called you after the championship game and had a lot of concerns with the way the Fields was playing, but I just have to say this, and I'm going to say this to Pete as well. Bottom line for the Buckeyes to win, and he has to play well. I think that goes without saying. Now, and I would say this, if he's going to be a top 5 pick in the draft, which is what the Kuipers and the McShays and all those folks are saying, he can't close out his career with 2 bad games in a row. I don't know how you can justify being a top 5 pick in the draft or a top 2, 3 in the pick in the draft if you put together 2 bad games in a row. Is that a fair statement?
Well, I don't think it's fair or unfair. It's the selection of an NFL team to make that, whether they believe that they can match his talent and aptitude for learning and developing with their coaching ability to make him the player he needs to be. There are all sorts of superstar players in collegiate football that aren't deemed to be players at the next level. Therefore, they get drafted in the 5th or 6th round, while there are other guys who accomplished very little at the collegiate level that still get drafted in the 1st round because of that portion of it. I heard Trent Dilfer say today on the Kellen Cowherd show that there was a razor's difference between Justin Fields and Trevor Lawrence. When Cowherd was setting him up to say, isn't Trevor Lawrence a much better pro prospect than Justin Fields? And by Trent Dilfer's evaluation, no, not the case.
Wow. Bottom line, Mark, I just don't think he can close out his Buckeye career with 2 really bad games in a row, and I just don't see how that's a top 5 pick in the NFL draft. And I know I'm being harsh on him here, but, obviously in the back of my mind, I know he's going to have to play well for us to win. It's one thing if he plays really well and they lose a 38-35 shootout, then, that's a different thing altogether. But if, he doesn't play well for back-to-back games, I just don't know. To me, that doesn't bode well for a future top 5 pick, because in many ways these great quarterbacks are going to be judged against the better competition that they play. Bottom line.
I understand what you're saying, but there is going to be some distance removed from the time that he underperforms in a playoff game and the draft at the end of April. Now that's going to be the tape, and that's going to be, to your point, the most important aspect of his resume, the most relevant. But there's going to be the workouts, the combine, all of that, and he still has a lot of impressive tape. And again, it's the most important position on the field, and teams are looking for that guy, the franchise quarterback, and they're willing to reach for that guy. And of course, it only takes one team. You know, if 31 teams don't believe he's a first-round quarterback, and I know you're not knocking him all the way out of the first round,
right?
But to further the point, if it's a hypothetical on a borderline first-round guy, that maybe 30 teams say, or 31 teams say he's a third rounder, but it just takes the one team that needs a quarterback to say this guy's a first rounder, or he's a top 10 player to pull the trigger and make him that.
Sure. Well, I mean, certain quarterbacks are aided by the big games. I mean, obviously, Vince Young made a lot of money in that Rose Bowl that night against USC. We all know that. You know, I think Deshaun Watson made a lot of money off of those performances against Alabama in those championship games. So, you know, I think that's a factor. Although I must say this, Justin Herbert played, I thought, very, very poorly in big games last year, and so far he's looked really good in the NFL. So, you know, sometimes you can never tell, maybe. So,
I agree with that. After watching Justin Herbert against the better teams in the Pac-12, and then watching his Rose Bowl performance, even though they won the game,
right?
As I recall, Oregon did not surpass 200 yards of total offense until the final drive of the game against Wisconsin. They got shut down. They had gift touchdowns. They did not outplay Wisconsin, and I thought, has he really looked good in this game? I was not impressed with Justin Herbert. He just looked like another college quarterback to me, but he's proving otherwise at the next level.
Yeah, in the 3 biggest games, Mark, I saw, because I thought he looked terrible against Auburn early in the year, or at least fairly pedestrian in their opening game against the Auburn last year, who had a better defense. So, hey, last thing, Mark, and I know we're going to get into these bowl matchups. To you, bottom line, most exciting non-playoff matchup?
If North Carolina was bringing their full squad, it would be their game against Texas A&M for me. With Chaz Surratt, and apparently the 2 running backs, or at least one of the running backs, Michael Carter and then De'Ami Brown. So you're looking at their best running back, wide receiver, and defensive player out. I'm going to default to Florida, Oklahoma. I'm a sucker for the big brands, and I think it's also, just from a matchup standpoint, an intriguing one.
Agreed, wholeheartedly. That could be a shootout, and I'm interested to see how improved Oklahoma's defense is going to be against Trask and that offense. So, yeah, rematch of the 2008 championship game definitely, I think, could be a good one. I will say this. I'm going to be interested to see how many players for Georgia sit out that Georgia-Cincinnati Peach Bowl, by the way, because obviously Georgia has been somewhat disinterested in their last few bowl games. I'm not saying Cincinnati can beat them, but if a fair amount of players for Georgia sit out and Georgia just doesn't really come to play, I think Cincinnati could keep that game interesting. What do you think?
Well, that's been the history, that Georgia seems to be on that line of thinking that they should make the playoff, thinking that they're good enough, but failing to do so except for 1 year. Therefore, they've turned in the infamous Texas performance in the Sugar Bowl. But other than that, certainly they showed up last year and played Baylor, and they only won by 2 scores. I think it was like 27-14, 26-14. But they were clearly, I don't want to say dominant, but they were the much better team in that game. And coming up with so that was in 19. The Texas game was in 18. Okay, the year before in the Sugar. So I guess maybe that game gets a lot of pub as being the classic recent example of a team not showing up. and having a lot of players opt out, number one, and then the rest of them not showing up apparently against Texas. But I guess it has only happened once to Georgia, but because there were a lot of eyes on that game, and that brought a lot of attention to the opt-out process because of the volume, they get pegged with that. But I guess it was just the one time.
Yeah, I'd be interested to see how many players opt out, and that might help. Obviously, that could be a thing. That the biggest thing is they can help Cincinnati going into that game. It's just how seriously Georgia decides to take it. So, all right, hey, you running the live stream the next couple of days, or what are you doing with that?
Oh, I believe we'll be doing that. Yeah, at least through the 23rd. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, good talking to you, Mark. You take care of yourself.
Absolutely, Dave. Thank you for the call.
Bye-bye.
Our man David Greenshield calling in. It's Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. You see the crawl below. Shop Amazon using the link in the description section so you can help us build the channel. And it doesn't cost you a penny, doesn't change your shopping experience. And I will change out the crawl now after I've let you know that to get the phone number out there for everyone. Please join me on Patreon as well. And I want to thank all the patrons in the Voice of College Football community who join me for $5 a month. Insider look that I'll be adding a lot to here in the next couple weeks. And, of course, my predictions. I got to get on this with the bowl games. I know I missed the one today. My apologies. Missed the prediction on the bowl game. Did not get to that. That one snuck up on me, North Texas and Appalachian State this afternoon. But I'll make my picks on the rest of the bowl games. And, of course, we've got Steve Merrill from Pro Sports Info with betting advice. And we've got exclusive live streams, watch parties per request. Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Who's on the line?
Well, Mark, I guess, it's Dominic, and I'm ready to talk some Clemson.
Okay. What you got?
Well, here's the thing. I'm shocked that Clemson was actually able to make the college football playoffs, but they're playing against Notre Dame, and I got to tell you, I've got a feeling about that. I'm not too sure if Clemson can win that game. I mean, Notre Dame. Wait a minute. Oh, sorry, Ohio State.
There you go.
Goodness.
Okay.
Yeah, Ohio State.
Okay.
Goodness.
Clemson, Ohio State.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, Ohio State. I'm trying to think of the name of that bowl game, though. What was the name
they're
of that?
playing in the Sugar Bowl. That's pretty
Sugar?
irrelevant.
Yeah.
They're playing a playoff game. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, but I mean, listen, I mean, that game shouldn't be that it should be kind of interesting, but I think, what's the name of the Clemson quarterback?
Trevor Lawrence.
Trevor Lawrence, yeah, I mean, he's done pretty well this year. I mean, except he's given up a couple of interceptions, which is kind of unfortunate, but overall, he's done pretty good.
Yeah, I have seen some people talk about him. He's apparently pretty good, decent player.
Definitely a decent player. I mean, overall, Clemson should get the win over Ohio State overall with the way Trevor Lawrence has played throughout the season.
All right. Anything else, Dominic?
Nope.
Have a good night. Thanks for the call.
You too. No problem.
Clemson, Ohio State's kind of interesting, and Trevor Lawrence is pretty good. Okay. Sometimes we become enlightened by these conversations. Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Who's on the line?
What's up, Mark? This is SPH Huntsville.
Hey, what's going on, man?
Ain't nothing much, man. Was this an open call-in, or was this strictly just based off Ohio State? I don't want to.
Oh, wide open. We're wide open to college football. Absolutely. Everything.
Okay. I just want to give my quick thoughts. Fortunate enough to play football myself down here at HBCU here in the South.
Oh, nice.
Coach football now. Yeah, coach here now in Madison, Alabama. Coach at Brian Reagan High School. Just wanted to give my quick thoughts, man. I've seen a lot of the fans from the other fan bases. You know, I try not to get into it too much with fans, because a lot of fans don't know the game, really just go bonkers over the most ridiculous stuff. So I try not to do that. But I want people to understand, Florida, man, you have to understand these guys prepped. I got 2 frat brothers on their coaching staff. They prepped for that Bama game for quite some time. And taking nothing from Florida. I mean, 84 is a man, brother. Mm-hmm. Trust me, Kyle Pitts is a man. It's not a lot of 6'7", 240-pound guys running 4.4 and can come in and out of breaks like a receiver, like that guy. You know, he's too big to put on DBs, basically, and too fast to put on linebackers. So he's a very, 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 very difficult matchup, man. Very difficult. And I saw what Coach Saban was doing. He was trying to cloud him with the safety, not necessarily doubling, but if you double him, you kind of take away from everybody else. You know, you let somebody like Kadarius Toney end up killing you. So, you know, those guys are a very difficult matchup on offense. We knew they was going to score some points. But I wanted to get his perspective on Ohio State. I watched those guys, and, you know, like I said, I'm not an Ohio State hater. You know, I respect Ohio State. I respect the tradition. But I will say, you know, as a Bama fan, you know, if we, you know, are fortunate enough to beat Notre Dame, you know, I'm not sure those guys get past Clemson, but I really, really, really don't think their secondary match up well, man. I think that Mac Jones would eat against those guys. I really, really, really believe it. I watched those guys, man. I watched them against Indiana. I watched them against Northwestern. And I don't think what people understand is, yeah, they play 6 games. Okay, cool, right? But I think playing 6 games is really going to hurt Ohio State. I don't think their continuity is where it's supposed to be. I don't. I saw Justin Fields, man. He's still doing things. When I look at him, it's like he's trying to make the big play on every play, it seems to me. He's holding the ball a little too long. Even when the receivers come out, they break and get open. He's still holding the ball, it seems like. So for me, it seems like those 6 games are sort of hurting Ohio State, you know, those weeks off. It seems like when they play against their best competition, they sort of struggle on the back end a little bit. Their left side, their left tackle and left guard, at times they struggle. And I really, really, really believe, man, they going to, unless Ryan Day pull a rabbit out of the hat, they're going to struggle against Clemson, man. I really believe that. Unless they get pressure on Trevor Lawrence, like real pressure. But this guy will pull it. He'll pull it, man. And I didn't realize Trevor Lawrence had wheels like that. I saw him last year in the game, but that was only so often. It's like now Dabo's cooking it up to where he plays where he actually keep it himself. So that's just another weapon that they have, man. I think Clemson right now is playing just as well as anybody on offense. We got our struggles with the middle linebackers at Alabama. You know, they're beat up. You know, Dylan Moses coming off a huge injury. To me, he looked like he still is not where he needs to be. He looked lost on the gap fits. His gap integrity is kind of crazy. It's kind of, I'm not sure if I'm not sure. He's very, very, very hesitant when I look at him. Christian Harris is beat up a little bit, so we have our struggles. We just lost Landon Dickerson, our quarterback on the offensive line, to me the best center in the country. So we got our struggles, man. We got our struggles, but I will say this, not trying to be a homer. Like I said, I got two young men who I coached on that defense right now in high school. They hungry, man. This team for Alabama is different than the last couple of teams. Last couple of teams, you had a lot of young men who were kind of individually, you know, thinking about their pro statuses, and, you know, you had little, little cliques and pockets, and the team didn't really hang with all each other. This team is totally different, man. Totally different. They worked out together. When the COVID actually seems like it brought this team closer. You know, I would go to practice. For those of us that have family and kids we coached, and a lot of times the practice habits wasn't the way it was supposed to be. But this team practiced hard, man. I was very, very, very impressed with these guys. You know, if you notice when Landon went down, did you see how the whole team went out there and was loving on him? You know what I mean? That's powerful, man. And, you know, to those that don't know, the team that play together and love one another, you got to be careful with those teams because they're going to lay it on the line. They're going to lay it on the line with no personal hidden agendas, I guess I could say. No pro statuses, no awards. They just play ball. So, you know, while Alabama do have our struggles on defense right now, everybody don't have a Kyle Pitts. You know, everybody don't have a 6'7" guy that's doing what that guy do. Everybody don't have a Kadarius Toney. Some great teams out there, man, but I really and truly believe this is the year. This is the year, man. So I'm going to be tuned in to that Ohio State and Clemson game. A lot of back and forth going on. I see with the Dabo Sweeney list. You know, it's a little video going around of Coach Day. You know, none of that stuff matters, man. To the players, trust what I tell you. Players use anything for motivation, but that stuff really for the fans. The players they just want to concentrate on getting done on the field, man. Trust me. When that ball is kicked off, nobody's thinking about those things. I promise you that. So I think it's going to be a great playoff, man. I see it both ways as far as Texas A&M and Notre Dame. I think college football is going to tweak some things, man, because, you know, I hate to sound like a homer, but we got to ask ourselves this. We really have to ask ourselves this as college pundits. When you look at the Big Ten, you know, over the past history or this year or however you want to look at it, to me, the Big Ten has really been a one-team conference. It really has. I mean, sure, Penn State and everybody was down this year, and they're usually competitive. But Ohio State, that's their conference, man. That Big Ten is Ohio State's conference to me. I don't see anybody in that conference posing a threat to Ohio State. It's sort of laughable when they try to big up Northwestern, like Northwestern was supposed to be just disgraceful. Northwestern, they played well. They well coached. They got a very, very good coach, man. I think Patrick Fitzgerald is an awesome coach. He's fundamental, but they were totally. If Justin Fields had even played half as good as he could, that game would have been a blowout from the giddy up. That is a one-team conference. I don't mean to be disrespectful, but I mean, when you think about the Big Ten, you cannot think about the Big Ten without thinking about Ohio State. That's just what it is. When you think about the Big 12, that's Oklahoma's conference. It is. Sure, some competitive teams, but that's Oklahoma's conference, man. When you think about the ACC, please don't give me Notre Dame for the fans because that apartment will be empty next year. You know what I mean? That's a 1-year deal, buddy. I mean, that's Clemson's conference. Trust me. That's Clemson Tigers conference. But when you play in this league here in the South, and I know the fans of the conferences go back and forth, but humbly speaking, I promise you, man, it's different in the SEC, brother. You can't say it's Bama's conference because last time I checked, Alabama didn't win the national championship or go to the playoffs last year. Our division rival did, LSU. A year before that, on the east side, the Georgia Bulldogs, they went to the national championship. If not for another SEC school, Alabama, they would have won a ring too. Texas A&M, they coming. You know what I mean? It's a very, very, very tough conference, man, to play in, man. And it's hard for me to look around and see teams like Coastal Carolina and Cincinnati because I played this game, brother. I played this game. You know what I mean? So I respect winning. I respect winning, but it's a difference in playing Temple and UConn and Austin Peay and who else? East Carolina and all due respect, Army. It's a big difference in playing that schedule there and playing Auburn 1 week, Texas A&M the next week, LSU the next week, Bama the next week, Georgia the next week. That's very, very, very different, man. I promise you, it is very, very different. It's hard for me to put a team in the playoff that has a schedule that Vanderbilt just may win 5 games on, possibly. To even have a possibility in that, I just can't do it. I can't do it when you see these teams that sacrificing every week, losing players every week, getting beat up every week in that type of competition. It's totally different. It's completely different. If I take Texas A&M and give them Cincinnati schedule, what would their record be? If you take Cincinnati and give them Texas A&M schedule, what would their record be? We have to ask ourselves that. I respect that. I do. I respect winning, but you got to put it into perspective, man. You really, really, really do. The last time I seen Cincinnati play a school that was worth their salt, I think Ohio State was destroying them by 40 points, I think it was. 30-some points.
42 zip. Yep.
Yeah, man. So I don't think people really understand the difference in playing a quality opponent. Everybody can get up for one game. You know that, Mark. Everybody can get up for one game, but can you come back around the next week and play that same level of competition the next week? and the week after that. You know what I mean? So
Yep.
I think these playoffs are going to be great, man. You know, everybody tune in, tap in, see what's going on. Congratulations to everybody make it. You know what I mean? Roll Tide to all the Bama fans. I appreciate you taking my call, Mark. I love your show, brother, and we're going to continue to support it.
Appreciate that. Thank you so much for the call, man. Great take.
No problem. No problem.
You have a great night. Good calls tonight. Very nice. Good stuff right there. Appreciate that. 161 on the line. We're up to about 240 at one point. I'm here taking calls on college football. Of course, we got the playoff. I'm going to post a video, hopefully first thing in the morning. I have done the work behind it, comparing Notre Dame, Texas A&M, Oklahoma, and I left out Cincinnati for the very reason that was just the subject matter at the end of the line of the last caller. Left out Cincinnati because you cannot compare Group of Five schedule, even in the American Conference, which is the class of the Group of Five. You cannot compare it to an SEC, a Big 12, even, or a ACC schedule this year. So I want to say that the committee did a decent job this year. They were really presented a very difficult mission of separating Notre Dame and Texas A&M, and to a large extent, you can include Oklahoma in that race. I know that they lost a second game, and that's the automatic disqualifier, and you got to go with wins and losses to a certain extent. But if you really look at the body of work, Oklahoma's season rivaled Notre Dame and Texas A&M's, but it was basically a competition between Notre Dame and Texas A&M for the 4th spot. I chose Notre Dame, but we were on here right after the SEC championship game. And of course, people's question was, more than any other question posed to me, was, Mark, who's your number 4? And I, being the person that I am, I just don't spitball reaction. So I said, I know I'm on here taking calls right after the SEC championship game and after all the conference title games. So I need to deliver for you guys and tell you what I think. But to do the due diligence of filling those 4 playoff spots, if I was on the committee, I can't just sit down here and tell you. So I'm going to let you know it's probably Notre Dame, but I got to go back and I got to do the setup of the games. And what I did was I took Notre Dame, Oklahoma, Texas A&M, and Cincinnati, and I lined up all their wins, and I ranked them from number 1 down the line. So for Texas A&M, of course, that was Florida, then Auburn, and on down the line. Then it dropped off the cliff after that. And of course, for Notre Dame, it was Clemson, albeit 3 defensive starters missing from the game, Trevor Lawrence. So that was a disclaimer on that game. North Carolina, and then on down the line, they beat 2 other winning teams with winning records in Pitt and BC, and on down the line. And I ranked the wins, and also not just ranked the wins in terms of the quality of the opponent, but the dominance of the performance. So just to finish that point, Texas A&M playing South Carolina and Texas A&M playing Vanderbilt were somewhat similar teams, although South Carolina was, for as bad as they were, they crushed Vandy. So that might be a bad example, but they were both 2 of the worst teams in the SEC. But Texas A&M barely got by Vandy. That was a close game. First game of the year, 17-12. They crushed South Carolina 48-3. So the quality of that win was higher than barely beating Vandy. So I went through the wins for every team and evaluated them. I also went through the scoring margin for each team and the yards per game margin, the offense versus what the defense gave up. And then I put some qualifiers on it as well. So be looking out for that video that should be released first thing in the morning. Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Who's on the line?
Hello?
Hey, who's on the line?
Yeah, Ted from Houston.
Hey, man. Thanks for calling. What's going on?
Yeah. So what I wanted to say was, I want to say I feel like the committee did get the right 4 teams. When you kind of look at it, I think a lot of SEC fans look back. I mean, we do get A&M, Alabama every year, so it's not like, it's not even just a rematch. It's the fact that you'll see that game. And plus, body of work. I have a lot of respect for what Notre Dame did. It was very impressive when they went on the road with North Carolina. But I want to get to the big picture. And the big picture is the tier ones. And this is, in my opinion, like I said, maybe Saban's best team, maybe Dabo's, in some sense, most talented. You go with the recruiting classes, you know. So, is this not, can we finally settle this is the dynasty game? If you really look at it as, does finally one move ahead of the other? They're 2-2, Saban, Dabo. I know Ohio State's a solid 3, but what separates Alabama and Clemson is really coaching and development. That is really, I'm not saying Ohio State doesn't develop some positions, but there's just something about I don't know, maybe it's the athletes, the way the team comes together, the adversity. Clemson seems to always get the best quarterback. Alabama gets, it's the best running backs. It's just, this is it. And I wanted your take of, do you really feel that I feel it's a collision course. I would be surprised if, after watching Ohio State, I felt was their best team last year. They actually, and I saw the best 2 players was Travis Etienne and Trevor Lawrence in that game. I saw 2 players beat a better football team. That wouldn't have happened against Alabama. Now, I felt like LSU was just that 1 year kind of hit, but Alabama, Clemson, do you think we had a 7-game series, Mark? What do you see here?
Yeah, good stuff right there. So I can both agree with the people, and it seems to be pretty split among College Football Nation, those people that say Alabama, Clemson, class by themselves. Then Ohio State's kind of in their own class. They're kind of lurking just on the fringe of Alabama, Clemson, but they're above Georgia, Oklahoma, etc. Then there's those people that believe that Ohio State is in the class with Alabama, Clemson. I can see both points, and I could do some extensive breakdown on that. I tend to believe that Ohio State is in Alabama's and Clemson's class because I don't put as much stock on winning national championships because of the invitation process involved in the playoffs. It's not an objective system that selects the playoff teams like it is in the professional ranks. Ohio State got left out twice just because they got left out. So anyway, I'm not going to get into that. To your point, the recruiting rankings and then the NFL draft selection. So we know that the talent is judged on 2 ends of the collegiate career, both the recruiting rankings measuring the talent of the players coming on campus from the high schools, and then 3 to 4 years later, the NFL draft measures how well those players were developed and just the sheer talent at those universities producing pro players. And Ohio State's at the top of that list. I'm not saying they're alone at the top of the list, but in producing just sheer talent, they're as good as anybody. But you're right. I would say that there's no question that if you look at the 2014 Ohio State team, and let's put them aside and start in 2015, that when the championships have needed to be won, that those 2 schools, again, they've been given more opportunities than Ohio State, but they have pulled through. The 2015 Ohio State team was an NFL team. They were, from a talent perspective, they were the best. They were the best team in the country, but they just didn't perform. They sleptwalked through that season, and they still went 12-1 and finished number 3 in the country. But they slipped up once. They didn't get the shot. It would have been fascinating to see them replay in a rematch Alabama from the 2014 game. That would have been phenomenal. That's what college football needed to see, not Michigan State go out there and get their brains beat out. But that's the way it fell. So I think we need to see over the course of the next few years Ryan Day's job performance, he certainly has taken the reins from Urban Meyer, and the recruiting has been just as good in all of that. But in regards to developing the talent and the game strategy and the execution, I'd like to see a little bit more. It's not a program that he built. Urban Meyer took a very good program from Jim Tressel and just ramped it up. Nick Saban obviously took a program that was like a top 40 program and made it the gold standard in college football. Dabo Swinney did much of the same at Clemson. He took an average program or a top 30 to 35 program, made it elite at the very top of the line. So Ryan Day hasn't had to perform that kind of a lift. He's merely taken the reins and done a great job. I do agree with your assessment of last year's game in trying to predict this year's, Clemson-Ohio State game. I thought Ohio State was a better team. They didn't win the game. Travis Etienne became a pass receiver. Clemson did two very smart things. Two great in-game adjustments was their receivers were not gaining separation against Ohio State secondary. They went away from their receiver and Travis Etienne was not gaining yardage as a traditional running back. They made Travis Etienne a deadly receiver out of the backfield, and they made Trevor Lawrence a runner. So they went to plan like C and D in the second half of that game. I would have loved to have seen what would have happened had Justin Fields and Chris Olave not miscommunicated on the throw that went into the end zone and got picked off, because Ohio State had moved it down to the 22-yard line. We were like in line for as good as the finish was. If there's not that miscommunication, who knows what happens? They're down at the 22-yard line. They got plenty of time left. They got like 45 seconds left in the game. That would have been fascinating to see it come down to, a 4-down situation inside the 10. But there was the miscommunication. And I agree with you. There are three big differences from a personnel standpoint on this Ohio State team. One is Chase Young was the best pass rusher in college football last year, and he's playing in the NFL now. So now Ohio State's replaced him with a lot of good players, but not game changers. So they're not going to get to Trevor Lawrence. Like Chase Young didn't necessarily do that, but they had to overcompensate for his side of the line and freed up other players. Number two, Jeffrey Okudah was a top 3 player selected in the NFL drafted corner and arguably the best cover corner in college football. Ohio State hasn't replaced him. And despite what Trey Sermon did against Northwestern, they've not replaced J.K. Dobbins. So Ohio State lost the game, but I thought was a slightly better team than Clemson last year. But they've downgraded, and Clemson has, to your point, upgraded.
So can I ask you a question, Mark, on this?
Sure.
Can you hear me?
Of course.
Yeah. So here, I think you brought it home perfect, and that's why I love your channel. I want to say that now there's really 4 teams that really, when it comes to recruiting, you can actually say Georgia, with Alabama, Ohio State, on a certain level, the way with their interior. I guess the thing that bothered me throughout time, because I know Ryan Day's the head coach, but he was the offensive coordinator too. And during this, I just don't understand how you don't see I don't see Alabama or Clemson ever getting blown out. Unless I know they played each other, blew each other out. But anybody that knows football, Alabama was inside the red zone 4 times, didn't even get any points in the title game. Clemson 24-6, that was a couple plays. My point is, the Iowa thing, you shake your head and you're like, these athletes. And then you see Purdue, and and then even when they match up against Clemson, they shouldn't be shellacked 31-0 in any bowl game, even if it was a rebuild after that amazing 15 NFL squad. They still had top classes stacked. So I guess that's probably, and that kind of leads some argument towards Georgia. Here they are with all this great recruiting. They finally right there with Alabama. They're saying, oh man, maybe Alabama's not the most talented roster, but it's like they can't get over the hump. How do they, Is it a coaching issue? Kirby's great at recruiting. Maybe he's not an elite coach. But then again, now they finally throw a quarterback in there. Could you imagine if they would have had Daniels all season? Could we be talking Georgia? And that defense, my God, that defense lined up this year and with a pulse of a quarterback to get it to their playmaker. So I don't know. Do you see anybody else? Do you think I know it sounds like the gap ain't too big to you with Ohio State, but you really believe Day is the right coach? Because Clemson's like that new Brees. Like, remember, you and I have been around a while. Miami of the 80s.
Yeah.
That's what he did with Clemson. And you're right. Nick Saban took a blue blood and brought it back and took it to Bear Bryant plus. So, I don't mean to talk too much. It's just good to hear from you.
No, it's good stuff.
And thanks a lot. No, thanks. I just like listening to good analytical and listening. I don't know if this is going to be Alabama Clemson forever, or does college football needs to sit back and say, calm down. Ohio State's they're not going to be. LSU, that's another thing. How do you lose 5 games when you recruit? So is Ed Orgeron, is he a Kirby Smart? Great recruiter. And, and Ryan Day, like you said, maybe the verdict's still out. He's got stuck with a great Meyer roster. And we'll see going forward, what he does. So,
Wait, your point about the Iowa and Purdue games, Ohio State fans we can't argue that away. They happened, and it happened twice, and the scores aren't just alarming. The opponent is alarming. So you mentioned Clemson and Alabama having 2, and I'm glad you went a little bit deeper, and that's what we try to do here, is not just, okay, the score was 44-16, the score was 24-6. Yeah, I watched every play of both of those games. Yes, it was a 44-16 Clemson win. At the end of the first quarter, I remember sitting there, and I even rewatched the end of the first quarter the next day, because I thought, was Alabama that close to taking a commanding lead? I think they were up 16-14. They were up 60. Right. So you were at the game. They were up 16-14, and they had a stupid penalty inside the 5-yard line that cost them a touchdown, where they had to kick a field goal on one of those drives. And of course they had the pick 6, and you can't, it's part of the game, but Tua made a bad blunder, and they had the pick 6 right out of the gate. But Alabama in total yardage was dominant in the first quarter. The number they were on the pace for 1,000 yards in that game in the first quarter. And they let it get away from them. But you're talking about playing another elite. You're not talking about playing an Iowa team that's the 30th best team in the country, or a Purdue team that's like the 45th best team in the country, and losing like Ohio State did. Yeah, those are inexplicable. Those are coaching blunders, lack of preparation, being out coached, allowing your players to buy into just having that letdown week that Saban and Dabo have not allowed their teams to be victimized by. When Saban lost to Ole Miss 2 consecutive years, those were really good Ole Miss teams. And they didn't get destroyed. They lost. They lost close games. Yeah. Dabo lost to a Pitt team. Yeah, that was an aberration. And what gets lost in that first Clemson championship, they should have lost to NC State. If the NC State kicker makes a kick with 15 or 20 seconds, we never see them play Alabama in the national championship game. But they lucked. Sometimes it takes a little bit of luck. But they weren't losing by 30 points. They lost to Pitt by 1 point. So I think your point is very valid about Ohio State being right there, but there's something not quite at the level of Alabama Clemson in the coaching and development aspect, and in the game management and strategy aspect and adjustment aspect. And then also, if I can just respond to your Georgia comment, I think we have to remember in giving Georgia, when we were sitting here at the same time last year, I was saying Oklahoma earned that playoff spot. They had to be selected. I totally agree with it. But if we're just selecting the 4 best teams, it's Alabama. It's Alabama, even with Mac Jones and us not knowing how good Mac Jones was going to be, and just us barely just seeing him start to develop at the end of last year, because Alabama's not going to be losing to LSU by 5 touchdowns at halftime of the playoff game. So those were the 4 best teams. Similar to this year, I don't know if Notre Dame's the 4th best team. Maybe Georgia with JT Daniels is the 4th best team. When I watched them play Alabama, I know the score was 41-24, and that's why I appreciate you going beyond the score, because I've heard, I don't know how many times since then, oh, Alabama killed Georgia. No, they didn't kill Georgia.
They did not.
Georgia had a quarterback who put them in bad situations that entire game, and they still were at a 27-24 game with like 8 minutes left. That was a great game. I loved that game. It was a tremendous game to watch. And then the Florida game, Georgia was out of it early, couldn't catch up, stayed pretty much within 2 scores. They were missing 5 defensive starters, plus Richard LeCounte, their leader on defense, and played the wrong quarterbacks. So, yeah, it would be interesting to see Georgia with their loaded roster with JT Daniels. I would have loved to have seen him play one really good opponent, though. That would have been interesting.
Yeah, because I think Georgia is definitely better than A&M today. I think Georgia, they just have they're a loaded roster. Like I said, they're strong in the trenches. They got the best defense. Clemson, Georgia, flip a coin. But, next year we get blessed with the kickoff of that game.
Mm-hmm.
Clemson and Georgia kickoff. But, kind of like I really think sometimes I think there's some points to be made where, when the committee, I know they're afraid of the 2-loss stigma and it's 5 conferences. But if we're really going to, like you said, it's, teams get hot. You remember that? Remember years back when Manziel, they had a couple losses, but they caught fire. Alabama lost 1 game. I know that was not the playoff era, but my point is nobody wanted to play A&M that year. They were just on fire. And, when you get teams like that, we've seen USC teams catch fire, and all the Carroll teams that choked nobodies. Now, my God, can you imagine how many? So, he would have won in a playoff era. So, I guess with Ohio State, the respect's there for the whole program. I think that when you talk to an Ohio State fan, what I try to understand is that they get so defensive, they throw up 50, 100 years and all that. I'm an Alabama fan. I'm like, hey, we've been there too. But, let's just sit back and do it on the field. Clemson has really got underneath Ohio State's game, man.
Yeah.
And honestly, and I think you and I can agree. Clemson rebuilt, after Watson left. And then it's just the D-line. I just don't see how that recruiting, Ohio State's top 3 every year. They've had and sometimes 2, and, but they're always top 5. And if you're top 5-ish every year, you're, and you're stacked many years, I don't know, man. I don't see how they should ever get blown out by any program in college football. Alabama maybe when they're stacked with number 1 classes.
Yeah.
But anybody else now, so I don't know. I think Georgia is definitely maybe move them to the Pac-12 when we get 4 good teams in every year. I don't know. You can't move them, of course. They're SEC down south. But my point is, it'd be funny to. I don't know if we'll ever allow Georgia, Ohio State, and Clemson
as the number 1 program in the country, just like Alabama fans see them as number 1, themselves as number 1, and Clemson fans. And so if somebody's going to put you at number 2 or number 3, it just doesn't sit well because you want to be number 1. And those are really the only 3 fan bases that can have a claim. Well, Alabama and Ohio State have they're the only 2 that can have a claim historically and in the moment. Clemson obviously has joined the party just in the last 5 years. Not that they didn't have like a top 15 all-time program, but they weren't this, of course. So I just think that gets under the skin of Ohio State fans because of just that. They've been so close to being like, if you look at Urban Meyer's tenure at Ohio State, the man lost 9 games in 7 years. And when you lose that few of games, they become crushing, because for as great as his run was at Ohio State, which I believe the numbers are 86-9 and a national championship and basically owning the Big Ten, if you pluck like 2 other wins out of he was this like razor close to just having this just ridiculous run.
I want to touch on that, Mark. You know what's crazy? If you look back, honestly, I mean, and it was supposed to be this way. It would have been good because it's the geographic. Would we not think? Remember when Meyer got it the first year, Saban got Clemson? I mean, I was telling myself, this is going to be Meyer Saban for the next 5 years.
Yeah.
Who would have thought that Clemson sat in Ohio State? Because it was supposed to be. And then, it just destroyed me to see Meyer leave Ohio State. I mean, to me, I think that, I just hated that situation because, I'm telling you, Meyer's a good motivator. He doesn't lose last year. I don't know. People can agree to disagree, but Meyer wins last year. Last year, Meyer gets a ring last year, but I don't know. Ohio State fans can live a day, I guess, but I don't know. There's something about Meyer and his motivation he can't still pull off. He lost a little of his fastball lately. I don't know if it's Dabo's swing. We're going to go into history, and we'll probably have an ESPN 30 for 30, and they'll talk about Dabo and Nick when it probably could have been Nick and Urban.
Yeah, it's a great point that you make, and we've discussed it here that if we turn back the clock 6 years, we're sitting here before Alabama, Ohio State. We're just, a week away, and Alabama's the gold standard right then, as they are now, but there's really no competition at the time, even though they blew it against Auburn, of course, the year before with the kick 6, but they were still just, they were the gold standard. And then here's Ohio State. Do they belong in the playoffs or don't they? And boom, they beat Alabama. They win the national championship. And suddenly you're like, okay, Meyer, he won 2 at Florida, and now he's got this rolling at Ohio State. And who Saban is, this is going to be phenomenal. And Ohio State went into 2015 the consensus number 1 team in the country, and it should have been, they only have themselves to blame. They lost the wrong game. They should have lost to Rutgers that year, not Michigan State, because if they would have lost to Rutgers, then they would have beat Michigan State head to head and still gone to the Big Ten championship and with 1 loss and gone to the playoff. But they lost the wrong game. Whereas Alabama, I don't know. Well, you're a big Alabama fan. You would know this. If you remember, Alabama lost to Ole Miss. So they almost pulled an Ohio State in a sense. They lost to Ole Miss. But Ole Miss then turned around a few weeks later, and they lost that crazy overtime game to Arkansas, where Hunter Henry threw the ball over his head on 4th down, and there was a melee for the football, and Alex Collins picked it up, and they won like 52-51 or whatever it was. And if that doesn't happen, then Alabama doesn't go to Atlanta. Ole Miss goes to Atlanta, and maybe Alabama still gets selected. I don't know, but they're in Ohio State's shoes. They got a loss. Everybody thinks they're one of the 4 best for sure, but they don't even get to their conference championship game. But I just think we were robbed of Ohio State, Alabama in 2015. That would have been phenomenal.
And I think, and I agree with you, and I do think Ohio State 15, it goes down as the greatest. That game would have been just incredible. It's funny you mentioned that because I remember what was funny was you mentioned the Ole Miss, and he got a couple on Nick Saban. And what was funny was they jumped up 24-3 of that, and Alabama had to come that next year when we played Watson, the first time in Glendale, I mean, it was 24-3 in the second quarter. We stormed back and jumped up double digits, and then here comes Hugh Freeze. And then by the time that game ended, I'm like, man, I never want to play this Ole Miss team again. What is going on here? And this team can just, he was good. But but going back to Ohio State, like I said, that 15 Buckeye team, and I mean, really, against Michigan State, they had 3 quarterbacks, and I just cannot believe that. I mean, Michigan State at home too. I mean, I just can't believe they were within 30 points of that game. I mean, I don't know. Ohio State can have been off as bad as they were. I know. I've watched that tape. You know what it reminds me of, Mark? I'll tell you what makes me sick in the NFL. This is just a sports fan.
Yep.
And you'll remember that. You remember, I'll tell you one game that makes me sick to my stomach, and I'm not even a fan of either one in the NFL anymore. I used to like the Broncos, Remember when Elway got his second ring? Remember, I was like, this is going to be the greatest Super Bowl. I saw he hadn't missed a kick all year. Minnesota up 7.
Absolutely. Gary Anderson.
Yep. And Anderson missed it, and I'm sitting here thinking, I was sick as an NFL fan because I'm sitting there thinking, man, that people don't understand. We probably was robbed of the greatest matchup in a Super. It was 16-2 against 17-1 Minnesota, and you know what? That's the way it felt in 15 when Ohio State lost. I was an Alabama fan because I wanted, Saban against Meyer bad. I mean, in Alabama, when you're a competitor, Saban, we say we ran him out of the SEC, and then he got us back in the playoffs. He didn't run us out. He always wanted Ohio State. And I think he got stressed at Florida, of course, which, he laid an egg his last season. But he just wanted to find a reason to get to Ohio State, and he did. And man, that's what 15 reminded me of, that Minnesota Bronco.
Yeah. No, that's a great comparison. Yeah.
It is, man. I mean, I can't think for NFL that would have been the matchup. And you know what? I'll be realistic with you. We had Coker that year as our quarterback. If you gave me money in the way, I would have said Meyer would have repeated that with that 15 team. I think he would have finally figured out the QB position in a month. He finally would have went. Somebody would have been able to throw the ball. And then again, I don't know. I mean, I just love that Derrick Henry and Kenyon Drake and that family, that defense. And then we look what we got. We got one of them, 2 back-to-back. And then you mentioned Clemson. And, now how they slept walk. You remember the rematch with Alabama Clemson. Remember how no one talks about Clemson stayed at number 2. They got beat. That was the year with Syracuse or Pitt, right?
Pitt,
where they slept walk. Yeah, they slept walk the whole year. And as soon as they get to the playoffs, they clobber Ohio State, which shocked me. Because Ohio State went into Oklahoma. They lose the game in Penn State, which was, I just couldn't believe they blew that double-digit lead. I thought Ohio State had an undefeated season. Because you were talking about 15 being number 1. Well, look at this. I remember looking at, what was the article? I always remember. Alabama thrives, Ohio State survives, and they won a game against Wisconsin where they had that Russian guy. They go in and they take it to Ohio State and the whiteout, or Penn State, in the whiteout, and then they choked. And I'm sitting here thinking, okay, and then they win and then Harbaugh, look what happened to his career. He goes into Iowa, loses after, they become number 2, and his whole destiny changes. He never can get, he got an inch from beating Ohio State, and he's never been a mile since. And then look at that, man. And I could tell Ohio State had some issues kind of throwing the ball that year with Barrett. You can kind of tell. Now, he improved the following year, but you still had a thing. They still had that aura about them. And when Clemson really beat them 31, and that was another game where they led points. That was the first time I sat back and I was shell-shocked with the Ohio State, but something told me that something started. That was when it started to unravel. For not just something was going on with the program. It had to be Meyer stressing again. I don't know. Something to me just seemed that just Meyer wins the big game. That's what it was when you give him a month to prepare, and it doesn't matter what the 15th team's gone. That team goes into Oklahoma, and I was like, they blew a game in Penn State. Fine, it was just like you said, it just happened. Just college football, like our Ole Miss. But we were going to get Alabama, Ohio State in 16, and then it just became Clemson from there on. And that to me has just been. I mean, I don't know what to say. Is it Dabo, or does he have an eye, which the 5 recruiting class can't figure out? What do you think it is, Mark? How does he find all these diamonds?
Yeah, before I respond to that, reminds me of something I mentioned to somebody the other day that brought up the 16 game against Clemson, and I said that in the moment, I could see Ohio State struggles on offense. It was evident to anybody. They beat Michigan on defense and guts and whatever they could squeeze out because they were not offensively. They were outplayed by Michigan, and they just again gutted it out. That team beat Northwestern 24-20. They struggled a number of times offensively that year. So that was my concern. Just looking at the nuts and bolts of how the teams are playing going into the Clemson playoff game, I thought Clemson's a better team. How is Ohio State going to score in this game? And I wasn't thinking they're going to get shut out, but I'm thinking, oh, they're going to score, 17 points or 14 points in this game. How are they going to score? But I trusted Urban Meyer that much that I thought he'll figure it out.
Same here.
He's done it all these other times, so he's going to figure it out. He was like 13-2 in postseason game. He's going to figure it out. But it didn't happen. In terms of the Clemson, so basically your comment was that they're, for as good as they're recruiting, they've even developed beyond the recruiting classes.
I think that was the turning point. I think what I'm saying. I think when they won that game over Ohio State, I mean, they always go back and re-recruit. I mean, Dabo is always, I think, here's what I think Dabo built. If you go back and look at Clemson, this is what Dabo found. He found great quarterbacks, and he found but it was really, at first, wide receiver U was Clemson. And what he did was he invented that 50-50 ball, receiver go up and get it. And Clemson, he just got a hold of a 5-star quarterback that became special. They got tough, in the D line, and I'll tell you what. After that game, against Ohio State, man, I mean, I don't know. I just sit back and I just look at how Clemson recruits, and all of a sudden, man, it's just like, I mean, look at Nolan Turner's. Okay, look at those kind of players. I mean, nobody even wants to get. I'll tell you what. I would take Nolan Turner anywhere in my tight secondary right now because of his I mean, the way he can read a quarterback, it's just phenomenal. What he lacks in athleticism, he makes up for in his just reading, the quarterback and the play. And same with with a lot of the guys they've brought in through the years. And you notice their linebacker, it's always somebody that, it's a very complex defense. You get the Skowskis and the the Bowlers. I mean, they always have that hard, rugged, then, Isaiah Simmons, of course, they always have the talent. They do get talent, don't get me wrong, especially what they're raking in now with their linebackers are definitely, that's where I think Clemson's really improving is what they've grabbed these last 2 recruiting classes. It makes me scared because here's what I was told yesterday by someone. Clemson will have their most talented roster next year. I was sitting back thinking about it. And if you look at how great Ohio State recruiting class was, this one right now and last year, they said Alabama had 37 of the top 300 composite. Ohio State had like 32 or Georgia 30, and I'm thinking, wait a minute, and Clemson was way above.
Clemson was at 33, and I'm like, that's top 300. They don't go and stack their roster. They don't transfer programs. They stay with their guys. And then that's something else too. You notice they don't go and get people. That's something Dabo doesn't do. So he kind of has this. It's like Dabo and them have their own formula. Have you kind of noticed that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that's what makes it unique, I guess. So, I mean, Mark, I just want to say, man, I mean, I just love talking ball with people, and I haven't talked to you, ever, and I appreciate your show. I listen, and I don't mean to ramble too much. I just love talking, college football. But I just think, your guts tell you, though, man, that this is Clemson, Alabama 5. Or if you really think, because I think Ohio State has the athletes, but I just don't see Trevor Lawrence, man, is like, let's sit back and look. Everyone always says the greatest quarterback since Andrew Luck. I'll tell you what, man, this dude's John Elway. He's the best. The way he moves, man, it covers yards. He looks like a grown. I'll tell you what he reminds me of. Remember when you were young, you played backyard football? He's the older brother that comes out and plays with you, and you're like, oh damn, why? Excuse me, but why is this guy? And he just looks. That's what he looks like out there. He looks like this kid. His talent. The way he can just read, and he's so long, and he can pull that ball back, and and he pulls it back so good, and he's gone. And he can just his football speed is just so ridiculous. It's and I see D-backs trying to run this kid down, and I'm like, man, he covers. Just so much. Clemson really makes me nervous. I like our matchup. I think our defense has improved at Alabama, but I think Clemson, Alabama this year is going to be a treat with Waddle coming back. He should be back for the top. Couple guys that I know on the inside, they believe Waddle will return. That should at least decoy or because they say he's looking really well. He should be back by the championship game. That's going to make this. That's going to be a game. And but unless you think different, Mark, do you think that Ohio State and Notre Dame have a good chance, puncher's chance, or do you think it's Clemson, Alabama?
Well, I always tend to think anybody's got a puncher's chance that's made it this far. So that's what I would give Notre Dame. And when I say puncher's chance, I mean 5 to 8% chance. Ohio State and Clemson, I see more like 60, 65, 40, 35 Clemson's favor. Like a decided advantage, but not crazy. I think the line's pretty fair at a touchdown. I think what we talked about early in the conversation in regards to why Clemson's a little bit better this year and why Ohio State's not a lot worse, but they're decidedly, it's easy to see and point to the factors and the personnel losses that make them not the team that they were last year. And Justin Fields has to get it together. I was awaiting to see the Justin Fields in the playoffs this year that we were robbed of seeing last year because he hurt his knee with 4 or 5 games left and was wearing a brace and was compromised. But now we're getting a Justin Fields who's going through his worst stretch of quarterback play as a thrower at Ohio State, where he was on fire entering the playoffs last year. He's struggling right now.
Do you think there's something to that injury? I think there could be an injury with the thumb. He's taking some hits because he's taking off at the ball, or maybe something, man. If it ain't his thumb, maybe he's not trying to disclose something. Maybe he got hit and we didn't, go back. Maybe I'll go look at some tape. I'm trying to think, did he take a hit maybe in the ribs or something that we don't know? And maybe, he doesn't want anybody to aim for it. And I don't know, maybe there's something psychological. I don't know what to think. But what I do think, though, with I try to match up, Notre Dame
if Alabama most likely wins this game against Notre Dame, which I think Notre Dame's going to come out on fire, they're going to play physical. They're going to try to keep Alabama. I think that's more. They might, I think Alabama 35 kind of. Notre Dame gets some respect. 17. I think they'll give more fire and Saban. He's not going to want to just pull away. Once he has it in the bag, he'll pull the team. But when it comes to Clemson and Ohio State, now look, they're fresher, and Ohio State is fresh. I know they don't have the Chase Young. They do have the recruiting classes. They have athletes. I'm just trying to think which team matches up with Alabama. I like Clemson's secondary. I like, they got Booth, 5-star Kendrick, 5-star Sheridan Jones, Turner back there in the back. Man, I think when you're trying to look for a great title game, now I'm speaking as a college football fan. Of course, if it was up to me, I'd want to win 70-0 against Clemson. It's just not going to happen. But if you're going to say, hey, can we get a great national championship game this year? Clemson, even if Waddle comes back, which it does seem like it will happen, Clemson, then Ohio State has injuries in the secondary. What was it? Cameron went out.
Mm-hmm.
Fort Williams was out for the year. I think there is some liability there. Now, do I think, I don't know. That front seven is solid. I don't care what anyone says. They don't have the guy, but they're all good players. They can stuff the run. They're physical. They go up against that O-line. And I think Ohio State's best chance, is let's see what that O-line can do. I would really try something different. I know they like to go fast-paced, Mark.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think it's best Ohio State invented a different formula and say, look, let's line up and let's just stay with running the football. Let's take time off the clock. Let's not give our defense any time where we have to get any 3 and outs. Let's play for a first down. If it's 3rd and 3, of course, let's just run it. Let's burn another 45 seconds, and we'll punt it. But let's not get into a shootout. I'm trying to think maybe they're a fresher team. I don't care what anyone says. They're fresher, and get Clemson into deep waters, and then turn on the Jets. Fourth quarter, things happen. People make plays. People make mistakes. What do you think the best strategy for Ohio State?
Well, that's one that you usually don't go to when you've got as much talent as Ohio State, and you've got the mentality that Ryan Day has. That hey, we've got a quarterback and receivers that we want to just dial it up and use our speed and our skill and all this talent, because that's what they're used to, having that advantage. But you make some great points in terms of protecting what might be an injury that's compromising Justin Fields, an offensive line that's a better run blocking line than a pass protection line. Northwestern, for as much as Justin Fields didn't play a good game against Northwestern, he was under siege a lot of that game. Northwestern would bring blitz packages that Ohio State's offensive line didn't pick up, didn't shift and make the right line calls, and miss things. And the run blocking, though, was exceptional against, again, not as talented a defense as they'll see this time with Clemson. But Northwestern's, they're really good on that side of the ball. And they got mashed up front by Ohio State's offensive line. And Ohio State's offensive line outplayed Clemson's defensive front last year in the playoff game in run blocking. They mashed them with Dobbins. So what you say makes a whole lot of sense.
Hey, Mark, can you hear me?
Yeah, I got you.
I wanted to ask you one more thing. So what I'm thinking is when it comes to, I'm kind of thinking at it more. I think you made a great point there. I think Ohio State, maybe it is 6 games. Maybe the offensive line, of course they're huge. They can run you over. But it's the communication. Mm-hmm. And maybe that people think it's an advantage, but it could be their disadvantage. They haven't had the time to communicate. Man, we've seen
right around the 6-game mark where teams really start to kind of figure things out. And going into a team that's played 11 games like Trevor Lawrence this season, well, that right there, that's a big disadvantage, especially with the Clemson defense that's so aggressive, that comes after you. And if you remember how Clemson kind of built you notice they built how the way they trapped Ian Book. They kind of made sure he stayed in that pocket. I could see the same strategy, and close those lanes, real fast. And where, Fields is going to they're going to force Fields to show him that he can throw the ball. And I'm kind of surprised that I would have thought, you're going to force Fields to throw with, that would have never been considered a weakness. I think people need to just kind of sit back and not judge 1 or 2 games and realize that Justin Fields can beat you with his arm and he can win this game for him. So,
yeah, it should be fascinating, more so than the other game. That's for sure. They knew the television network which game to put in prime time. I don't think there's any question about that.
Yeah, I agree. It's good. And the fan bases are really just at each other. I mean, I'm looking at it. There's really some hatred going on. It's going to be fun. Do you have a preferred team, Mark? I know I pay attention, but do you prefer? Do you have one team you ever talk about? Sometimes I get your channels. I like to go back and watch them all.
So you don't know in terms of how I grew up, who I root for. Is that what you're asking?
Yes.
Okay. So I enjoy this. I feel like I'm doing my job when people don't know who I root for, because that's what I'm trying to do. Is I'm trying to be as objective as possible. I clearly state it's impossible for anybody that's got blood running through their veins to be completely objective. It's impossible, but I do my best. I actually have Ohio State fans that hate me. I had 2 or 3 of them on Twitter today tell me how much they hated me and that I did a horrible job and blah, 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 all this other stuff. I'm an Ohio State fan. And so I like when people can't figure that out, because
you're unbiased.
That's what I'm aiming for here.
All your breakdowns. You're fantastic. I've watched them. What I like to watch is every year college football players. I have a lot of times, like a lot of these kids that get on YouTube, is that I go and watch all your playoff when you do your breakdowns of big games, or I'll go watch. Sometimes you do those good 20, 30-minute videos that I used to love all the time, and I'll listen to your key breakdowns of a big game or something. But no, you would never tell that you're a fan. You kind of call it, and that's why I'm just surprised. I like to see you get, 1 million followers. I mean, I think you deserve.
Amen to that.
I think you deserve a job at one of the big channels. I really believe you're phenomenal analysis. Your analysis is just great. You don't find many Mark Rogers on YouTube, and I'll definitely let everybody I know subscribe to your channel and get your subs up. Appreciate your work, Mark, and I appreciate you listening to me. I kind of caught me on a cup of Starbucks because I had a long day, and I just want to. Sometimes I just love talking football, and talking smart football. And I hope I knew a little bit, not like you, but I know. I still feel like I know. Been around a long time. I can go back 40 years plus and talk good games,
Hey, man, we can all learn from each other. There's no question about that. That was a great conversation. I appreciate it, and certainly take the time to call back anytime.
I will check in with you again. Just won't be as long to waste your time. Thank you, Mark. Thanks for your time, buddy.
Yeah, appreciate that. Have a great night.
All right, man. Take care, buddy.
Good stuff. We were on so long, I don't even remember how he identified himself at the beginning of the call. We'll take some more calls here. I thought we were pretty much done for the night, but that's okay. I know that, unfortunately, and I apologize, I ignored some calls that were coming in while we were having that conversation. But you get into the history of college football, and then I'm really a sucker for digging up, 2015. That happened in 2008, and yeah. I'm a sucker for those conversations. Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Who's on the line?
Hey, Mark, Sooner Throne. How are you, man?
Hey, man. What's going on?
Oh, just was listening a little bit and hadn't called in a while.
Yeah. How you been?
Work schedule's been a little bit different, so I haven't. But I've been trying to listen when I can. But pretty good. I guess somehow, some way, we got through this crazy college season.
I see that you guys squeezed out a Big 12 championship. That was a surprise. That's the first one since when? It's been a long time.
Yeah, it's been a while.
Yeah.
A year.
Yeah.
And the year before,
Yeah,
that.
You only get to that once a year. I don't know what's wrong with you, but my goodness. That it was a good ball game, though. I thought you were dominant early, and then Iowa State came back. And I wish, just as a football fan, that Brock Purdy would have made better decisions on that last drive to make it a little bit more suspenseful at the end. But especially for a school that hasn't won a conference championship since 1912. But it's
but they were pretty. They put up a good fight. I kind of thought we would. That our defensive line it's just a lot better than I thought it would be this year, and it definitely caused havoc to him, made him have to hurry a lot, and the line's just pretty good. It's a lot better, and it's amazing. It improved so much since the first of the season because and the tackling and we were kind of the no-name defense. We only because our star didn't only played in 4 or 5 games, Perkins, but we only had on the Big 12 one guy that made first team defense, and that was a guy that was not even a starter last year. So, and then really on offense, there was only our center and then the receiver Mims. So it was kind of Iowa State pretty much couldn't dominate, and I think OU I think they took a little bit of that. That wasn't talked about how they were when you look at the whole season, they were the best defense in the league, which is shocking because it's Oklahoma. But I mean, Grinch, he really has definitely made some big changes, and I think the fact that it was sort of the no-name, but they rotated a lot of guys. They just played a whole bunch of different guys in the secondary, linebacker, even on defensive line. It really was just a lot of guys, but that's where we had to be. We hadn't been until the last year or two where if guys make mistakes, they can bench them. We didn't have the depth to do that in the secondary or in the front set. But because of our recruiting is better now, when guys are not playing as well, or heck, this year with COVID, you never knew who was going to play or not play. Mm-hmm. They were able to finally have the talent to these young guys, and that was one issue early in the season when we kind of started 1-2. A lot of those young guys, they had missed so much because of COVID that they just weren't ready and I didn't think he'd do it against Texas, but he played a lot of the young guys against Texas, and that's where they started making some change. And it just finally, if you weren't doing, they have the ability to bring other guys in, where it used to be they just make mistakes and we just had to live with it. So I think that was the big difference in our defense. I mean, they won the game. There's no way. I mean, our offense was good in the first half versus Iowa State, but they were not good in the second half. And the defense, I mean, 4 turnovers. I mean, that was another. We never got forced turnovers last year. But the last half of the season, we were getting 2 or 3 a game. So I hope that Grinch. I hope he sticks around a little bit longer. I think he's going to. I'd like to. But I do think next year is potential. Oklahoma's potential to be pretty strong next year.
Yeah, I don't remember what job opening it was, but I saw his name pop up the other day, and I wasn't surprised, but it was the first time that I saw his name listed by a reliable source as being possibly under consideration.
Arizona.
Yep.
Arizona.
That was it.
And last year he decided no on Washington State, and he had connections there with Lee. He coached there, and then Arizona. But I don't know. I think Mike Stoops did that, and it's just kind of that's just 2 ex-Oklahoma assistants that have both failed. I mean, someone was real bad there.
Yeah.
And Mike Stoops was kind of he had a couple of decent years, but he just kind of at the end. No one should ever hire him as a head coach coach again. He should just be an assistant recruiter. He was a real good recruiter at Oklahoma, but he's pretty much proven he's not a very good head coach. So I don't know, but yeah, it was a good one. I didn't get to watch a lot of the Ohio State game. Kind of flipped back. I was just amazed that Trey Sermon got as many yards in one game as he did the whole season. I was like, what the hell? That Northwestern just couldn't. I guess just couldn't stop the run at all. I guess. I mean, because Sermon's not exactly a guy who breaks 70-yard runs or anything. I mean, he's a 10, 12, 8, 15 type guy. So
yeah,
a lot of bashing.
And not that he didn't run the ball well and play very well, obviously running for 331, but it was offensive line generated. You know, there were running lanes. Now, he made the right read, made the cutbacks needed. A lot of it was, okay, there's a cutback lane that's enormous. I don't remember any tremendous moves that he made in the open field downfield that turned, 12-yard runs into 25-yard runs. He carried people. He was running hard. I think once he got that thing rolling, he probably had so much adrenaline thinking, man, I am on fire here. And he ran harder than he typically does. And I'm not cutting on his, I think you get it. I'm not cutting on his effort level. Otherwise, I just think he had 10 carries for $150 at halftime. And the other back, Master Teague, had 2 for 23. They were combined 12 for 173. And I tweeted out, Ohio State's got no touchdowns. They got 6 points, and they've run it 12 times for $173 with these two backs. Something's wrong here. They were just. I think Ryan Day has to fight himself, even when the run's working, not to dial up passes. He just wants to throw the ball. He wants to call up pass plays. He wants to get creative, and he just couldn't help. They had a drive where they ran 3 plays for like 37 yards. Like they're ripping off 12, 13 yards. And then the fourth play, they're throwing the ball and they throw a pick. So they finally, it finally got through to Ryan Day, and you could tell by the stats, 19 carries in the second half that he finally was like, we're just going to run the ball almost every play.
Yeah.
But it took until the fourth quarter to figure that out. Yeah.
And which they were lucky because I guess Fields, he's just not been as good this year. But the running game was working. That was lucky for him. And that Fields didn't have to, because last year Fields he was really good, but he just not quite as, I don't know. He doesn't seem to be quite as on this year. Maybe it's all the stop and goes and COVID, and you never know who's going to be at practice and if they're going to play. And I don't know. That definitely is not good for a quarterback to build up time, because you never know who guys are having to sit out and miss things whenever. And I don't know. Still sounds like if he goes, he's projected a top 5, so I'm sure he'll go ahead and go pro. But he's a raw kid. He really hasn't even played that much. He only really played about a year and a half. He didn't play his freshman year. Only played a half a year this year than last year, so he's definitely got a lot more, time to build. And that is one thing about Lawrence. He's played a whole lot of footballs because he's played about as many games as you can as a college quarterback every year.
All right, Sooner Thrawn.
To him.
Yep.
But well, I just wanted to say hey, and I hope. I don't know if Notre Dame can hang with Alabama, but I do think Clemson, Ohio State could be a pretty good game. I think that'll be a good one. But
Ohio
the good
State
thing about it is,
the
good thing is we don't have to wait the month. We only got 10 days. I guess that's one good thing about this weird season.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right, man.
Thanks, Sooner Thrawn. Appreciate it. Good hearing from you. Talk to you soon.
Have a good night. Bye.
Too. Bye. All right, folks, we're entering the 3-hour range. So I think we'll shut it down here. Appreciate everybody who tried to get in the conversation and called up multiple times and didn't get in. So thank you so much. We'll be back tomorrow night. Again, Bleach Orange, Chase Henderson, SEC Dog. SEC Dog made some kind of comment that I didn't get to his question. What was his question? He wanted to go to 18 playoff, which I agree with. He also said something about playing a 4-team. So the 4 teams that played in the playoff the previous year would play in the regular season the next year. I don't have time to like analyze all that and work through why that might not work. So understand that. On the surface, yeah, it's a great tactic. It creates great matchups, rematches from the previous season. Oh, absolutely. From a marketing standpoint, TV standpoint, and matchup standpoint, yeah, if we would have seen Oklahoma LSU this year, that might have been a decent game, even though Oklahoma seemed to be so much better. I know that might have drawn a few chuckles. We saw what LSU did against Florida. That could have been a good game. And I'm going to believe in LSU and SEC speed and talent. Then the other game, of course, would have been Ohio State and Clemson during the regular season. Yeah, I think the concept's great. I'm just saying that if you build it into a scheduling formula, it may have some quirks or tweaks that don't work. Okay. I've built a scheduling system both in conference and out of conference that I will, because most of you weren't watching me maybe 3 years ago, the last time I posted it, I will repost those videos. I will recreate it. All right. Appreciate everybody jumping on the line. Again, if you're on Amazon, shopping on Amazon, please help us build the channel. Grab the link in the description section. It's the same exact shopping experience. Doesn't cost you a penny. You're going to see a product there. Just blow right by it. Do your shopping. Use the link that we provide in the description section below. Special thanks out there to Cheryl, our moderator. We've got like 9 moderators, but Cheryl's the one that shows up and delivers and gets the job done. So Cheryl, we thank you so much for that. Appreciate, again, all the super chat contributions. We will keep this going. This is almost an experiment with my career. You understand that? So quit the job at ESPN after 19 years 2 months ago. I want to do this full throttle, do it all the time, do it right, fix the technical and operational things, build the brand, do the marketing, the sales, all the things that have to be done to actually earn an income and build a business. And I'll give it as long as I possibly can, but we need your individual contributions and also sponsorships. If any of you have connections to potential sponsors, businesses that could benefit from what we deliver here, please contact me at MarkRogersTV at Gmail. And if you're just going to contact me and say, Mark, go after Coca-Cola or go after Dick's Sporting Goods, please save me the email. Don't do that. I understand that. I would love to have Dick's Sporting Goods or Coca-Cola. Yeah, I get it. Nike. I don't need the suggestion for that. But if you have a real suggestion, contact that you can deliver to me, please do so. Any recommendations, suggestions, requests that you have for content, contact me at MarkRogersTV at Gmail. We'll be back tomorrow night with our live call-in show tomorrow night. Also, Wednesday is the big night with Ohio State, Florida State, and another call-in show on Wednesday that takes us right into Christmas Eve. I'll take a little sabbatical there, if you don't mind, with the kids. Mom, she came through for me. So I'm talking to my mom. Bless her heart. She's going to be 91 in a couple months. I was talking to Mom. My kids call her Nana, the other night. And she said that she was making chocolate chip cookies and fudge and all of that. And I said, man, I haven't had good fudge in so long. And she didn't say anything. She just said, oh, yeah. And boom, this arrives over the weekend. Just packed with fudge. Just some, I already ate one. The first layer's gone. Ate that block of fudge. Now there's the bottom layer of fudge. So thanks to Mom. She made Christmas week for me. My daughter and I will be making Christmas Eve dinner, chicken parm, and some other specialties there. Should be really good. We hope all of you enjoy your Christmas or whatever holidays you celebrate. at this time of year. And again, I can't thank you guys enough for liking the videos, commenting. As the last caller mentioned, he's going to get out there on social media. Just tell his friends, hey, this is the best discussion, debate, and analysis of college football. Do we deliver that every day? No, but that's our aim. That's our goal. That's our mission and objective every day. Best discussion, debate, and analysis of college football. So again, Bleach Orange, Chase Henderson, SEC Dog. I hope I answered your question. SEC Dog, great supporter, but man, he pokes me in the chat all the time. I guess I didn't answer his question. Great idea of the 4 teams playing in the playoff the next season in the regular season, but it may not necessarily work functionally, but it's a great idea. And yes, we need an 8-team playoff, no doubt. Go Jay made a comment about the SEC schedule not necessarily being a gauntlet, and I can't post that anymore. I've gone too far by that. You're right. When you look at Texas A&M's schedule, I believe, like most reasonable college football fans, that the SEC is the best conference. Trust me. Look at the metrics this year, the games played out of conference. We can't prove it this year. There's nothing to prove it. We just know it to be true. It's reasonable. The SEC has been the best conference. It's still the best conference this year. But there's nothing on the field to prove it yet until we have bowl games and playoff games. But when Jimbo Fisher says, we played a gauntlet and we should be in the playoff and we just played the hardest schedule. No, you didn't. No, you didn't. You played an excellent Florida team. Your wins were against an excellent Florida team. Despite losing 3 games, Florida's really good. They're one of the 10 best teams in the country. You beat them, great. It wasn't like you mashed them. You needed a late fumble to cash in on a field goal to beat them, but you beat them. And your second best win was against Auburn. A 6-4 Auburn team that by all measures should have lost to Arkansas had the officials done their job. And Auburn also, if you watch the Ole Miss game, could have easily lost that game. That was a controversial finish as well. Auburn could have been 4-6. So those are Texas A&M's best 2 wins. Sorry to say that, Aggie fans. I know you don't like me for saying that, but I just tell the truth here. Your best win was against Florida. Kudos. Second best win against Auburn. It's a quality win. After that, your third best win was either Arkansas, Mississippi State, or Tennessee. No, it was LSU. 5-5 LSU. That's an okay win. It looks much better right now after LSU beat Ole Miss and Florida, of course. But no, Jimbo, I'm not giving you the gauntlet. Wasn't the gauntlet. You failed in your one gauntlet test. You got ripped by 4 touchdowns. You played a good schedule. Notre Dame played a little bit better schedule. All right. I'm going to check out anything else from me. Nicely done. Thank you so much, Michael. Appreciate that with the impression of Jimbo Fisher. I didn't really try to give it a good impression. Maybe I can work on that. Yeah, I'll have to work on that one. So I can actually do some impressions when they just hit me. It just kind of flows out of me once in a while, but I'm no Rich Little. All right, Michael, appreciate that. Joshua, you as well. Good to see you guys on the line. It was a great show tonight. We went almost 3 hours. We're at 2:53 right now. So I think I got to heat up some leftover chicken. Here at Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football, be looking out for those videos. I'm going to post them early in the morning. Also, live show tomorrow night. Hit the bell for the notifications once you subscribe. That way you know when we're going live. And you can also hit me up at Venmo, PayPal, and Cash App to contribute to what we're doing here. All right. Great to see everybody. Even Alfred the Savage, who tears me apart all the time. Even great to see you, man. Sooner Thrawn, thanks for calling. Sooner Thrawn joins us on Patreon, and Patreon's going to get much better. I appreciate everybody that joins us on Patreon. It's 15 cents a day. It's $5 a month. Insider look at Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. My predictions, minus I slipped up and missed the bowl game today. I didn't get a chance to pick the bowl game and forgot about it. And that's actually what I'm going to do tonight. I'm going to watch the App State North Texas game right now. I may even analyze, I believe, App State. I'm sure they won. They were up like 21-7. Going to analyze App State, I believe, for next season. Maybe give you a little video on what we can, what kind of starters and personnel are back for App State and what kind of outlook for next season. And then we'll be back here tomorrow, of course, here at Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. See you next time.